It's Friday. Knives are out, or knives are out for Chapek. No Time to Die has an okay box office so far, going for it. And Pinhead is now a they them. I might learn how to talk before the show starts. So welcome to Midnight's Edge in the morning. Joining us today is Kamran Pasha. How you doing?
I'm good. Am I muted? I'm not. I'm always muted.
No, you're not muted this time.
Okay, no, so all is well. We hear you good and well.
Oh, I was like, no, wait, you're muted, so that's good.
Also, of course, we have the boss man, Andre, with us this morning as well.
Greetings, everyone, and good morning on this fine Friday. And we also have quite a few people in the chat. We have Willie Woodward, who says... hey guys, Sax says, hello, Kamran. We have Sherry here. Lord Trinan is here. We have Valiant Renegade, who says, good morning, Kamran. Valiant also put out a video on the Venom box office earlier, so do check that video out after we are finished live. Then go check that out. And then we also have the Norwegian Blue Guy joining us. Good morning, good morning. Joachim Stark is here representing Sweden. John Doe says Andre's voice, well, Will Bloom says it's finally Friday with Midnight's Edge. So yeah, that's
this is the only day in the week I sleep. I got to wake up early because out of loyalty to Andre and Tom, I'll get up for what is 9 a.m. for me, which is very early for me.
Yeah. And Max says, well, first Sebastian Simonsen says Congo, and then Max has a suggestion for today's drinking game.
Okay.
Take a sip every time Kamran says, right? So, yeah.
Is that a thing I do? Okay.
Well, enough that one can make a drinking game from it.
Apparently. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, of course, it's a much more challenging one. It's like every time I say Frankenstein. So, yeah, we'll see if we can incorporate that into the eventual retrospective. And then we have Stephen Otten, who says, hail Andre, Tom, Kamran, Wrenches, and Chat. Yes, indeed. Hail one, and hail all. And
we have all these lovely ladies who are wrenches. We have all these lovely ladies who are wrenches, and I don't know that there are going to be lovely ladies on screen today, which makes me sad. But at least there's these lovely ladies as wrenches.
Yes, we have both Mags here and many others. So that is brilliant. Double back again says for $5. Hail Midnight's Edge in the morning. Kamran, have you seen Midnight Mass on Netflix? Great show. Curious your take on their Muslim representation. Thanks.
I haven't, so I'm going to check it out. I apologize. I know you very generously donated super chat. I'm not familiar with this show, so I'm going to have to go check it out. You know, the interesting thing is happening is there's so much now because of Netflix. These streamers, you're like. People are like, have you checked out this show? It's like, I've never even heard of it. So, so I'm going to have to go check this out.
Yeah, there we go. So there we have a recommendation. And then just saying hi to the audience, we have many other members checking in. Film Lars is here. Dolben is here saying afternoon. Darius Münchhausen sent us a super sticker. Thanks for that. Roger H is here.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, we also have people representing Spain. I saw someone from Serbia, which is suitable because we'll be talking Hellraiser, and that is where that was filmed. So that's pretty awesome. But before any of that,
we got a couple more.
Of course, be talking some Disney and Bob Chapek, because that is an ever-developing story.
Yeah.
Before that, though, the gay rascal wants me to say Frankenstein. And we got a new member in Chris Foster.
Yes, we did.
So welcome, Chris.
Welcome. Welcome indeed. And then we also had a super chat from Spider Unlimited who said, hail, y'all. Saw NTTD happy for reshoots and fans being heard. Lots of odd choices, though. Well, we're going to get into that.
Very much so.
A lot of mixed reactions to No Time to Die so far.
And just to repeat that, I thought the movie was fine right up until I'm not going to say like the third act because there were more than 3 acts in the movie, but in the final act, where the whole thing completely and utterly unraveled and fell apart.
Sort of like Game of Thrones, it's just like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, kind of. When all of the seeds of destruction that had been sown throughout the movies all came together in full bloom and brought the entirety to its knees.
All right, well, we'll talk a little bit about
creative decisions.
Yeah. That's very sad because I'm a Bond fan. I'm going to go see it tonight, even though I'm going in with much trepidation because I already have heard so much about where it ends. But I guess I'll have to face the music.
Well, you'll see why he had to make the choice that he did. But I'm very curious as to your take as a writer on if you think the writers should have put him in that situation, because to me that was very clearly a case of the writers put the character in a position where it goes against the grain of the stories to put the character in. That's my analysis of it.
Well, whenever you have to say something like that, then the answer is already obvious. The writers didn't need to do that, especially with a franchise that has been going on now for 70 years, right? Almost. Yeah. And it's 60 years plus. And it's I don't know that the writers chose to do that. We'll talk about it further in the process, but writers don't, especially movies, are not the ones in control. Even someone like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's very powerful, is not in control. And so we'll analyze why people above her may have made those choices.
My problem with it is it's basically a gimmick, right? Because it's not like he's going anywhere. They're going to do another one, but now from what having not seen it until tonight. Now they've created a hiccup in the continuity of this mythology, right? Which essentially is going to mean that you're going to have to reboot this thing, which is never the mythology up to this point. Always sort of, I guess, in some ways, the Daniel Craig era has been its own.
Yeah, it is a reboot. I mean, that was the Batman Begins.
Some pocket little universe, yeah.
Like that completely severed all continuity ties.
Yeah. It's always because the opening scene of Casino Royale, which I very much enjoyed as a movie, is him becoming 007 when he takes out his first 2 kills, right? Gives him the 00, right? So it's that I guess they've created a beginning and end story, but even that is not necessary. But we'll get into it.
Well, the problem is James Bond will return, but he'll be a black Asian trans man.
Yeah, but that won't happen. And I think and we'll talk about the fact that Daniel Craig has come out in news interviews recently saying he doesn't want that to happen. That's an intentional choice because they're getting the dumb people who think that's going to happen, the people that are wishing for that to happen. He's setting them up that you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, like the way that I see it after having seen the movie, that is either they have to do another complete Casino Royale style reboot, which is the more likely thing, or they're gonna come out and say fooled everyone, and Daniel Craig will return for yet another movie, and then we'll have another scene saying, "Oh, here's what really happened when we left to your imagination. What really happened there? This is what happened."
That's what I was thinking, Andre, because I don't want to know how that ending happens. I'll see it tonight, but I'm thinking if I was a writer, I would.
I thought you said you had seen it. Sorry.
No, I'm planning to see it tonight. So no, I mean that's it hasn't been. It wasn't released until last night here, at least in the U.S. So and so I'm planning to go see it tonight. But if I was a writer that was told to do this, firstly, I'd hope I'd be in a position to fight back, but probably not. As no matter how rich you are as a writer in movies, in features, you're just a hired gun, and so they're probably like, "Oh, you don't want to do it? You're fired. Next guy." But let's say I was like, "All right, I got to make this work now." I would write it in such a way that would allow, the continuity to be restored in the subsequent movie, so that this ending that I'm hearing is what happened can be filmed in an ambiguous way. And I don't know how blatantly obvious that outcome was shown. I'll find out in a few hours, I guess. But that's how I would do it, that there should be some ambiguity allowing the franchise to continue without a full reboot.
I would say that there is no real ambiguity, but if there's a will, there's a way. and you can retroactively say that there was ambiguity.
No, let's be real. This is all about.
It's staged in such a way that one can do that if there's a will for it.
Let's be real. This is all about killing our white male heroes.
Correct.
This is about killing Luke Skywalker. This is about killing James Bond. This is about killing Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. It's all going to come to fruition, kids. They already killed Wolverine. I mean, that's where this kind of started. And they just said, oh, well, we can get away with that, right? Well, we can kill the rest of them.
Yeah, and I've always said the woke Bond was the one step too far. And the woke Bond, apparently, even if it's been reshot that much of the woke has been removed, the ending is the problem, right? So it is now premiered at exactly the moment where that narrative is done, right? Especially now. I mean, this movie has been delayed for a couple of years. My understanding, the villain's plan is a little too close to home as events that are happening, right? So,
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and so this movie is clearly a dated movie that it's like Black Widow. It's just a movie that came out of time at the wrong time in many ways, right? And so this is a leftover from and this is the thing people don't understand about movies in Hollywood is it takes years to make them, right? And they're a train that's really hard to derail once they're on. And so this is a leftover thing from a world that Hollywood has realized isn't going to make it money and is trying to escape from, but they still had to release this damn thing, no matter how much they fixed it. Although I would have fixed the ending. If they're going to reshoot the damn thing, they should have reshot it. And the reason they didn't change that ending is because of what Tom is saying, is that you need to end these white male characters. And I don't think anybody
even if we know they're coming back, it's still the symbolism, right?
Yeah, it's a
symbolism of it all. John Connor is another one that I forgot to add, and He-Man, of course, was brought up in the chat.
And I wouldn't go. When I heard that John Connor's death in the opening of that Terminator, I didn't go see it because to me that's and people said there were parts of the movie that they enjoyed, and the young Latina actress was perfectly.
Stay away from those people.
All right, whatever. So, but but I didn't go see it because I was like, to me, that's such an offensive thing because that whole it undoes Terminator 2, and there's no value to that. There's no story value to that. And the reason it was done, I knew at the time, was purely because you couldn't have a white male hero. You'd have a Latino female hero, right? Whatever. So, but the industry, and we're going to talk about the industry struggling with trying to return to common sense and profitability with what's happening with Bob Chapek.
Yeah, and that struggle is still going to carry on for another bit. And I have to say, with Bond, there are two scenes in particular that I'm very curious about how people will react to. It's the obvious thing that we've been walking all around, and then it's the scene that absolutely must have been written by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and that's the scene where he's on his knees crying and apologizing. And yeah, there is such a scene. There's a context there, but still, I can see that someone had great delight writing that and filming.
Well, I mean, look, Bond can be psychologically complex. I didn't mind the stuff in some of the recent movies where you find out about his family and his childhood deaths of his parents, whatever, and you go into his psychology because the books Bond is psychologically complex. He's much more complex in the movies. In the original, Fleming novels, Bond is a really damaged person. It is very clear he's a damaged person. It's very clear in the books that he's struggling with actual misogyny. The books are very clear about that. He's had bad experiences with women, especially in the first novel, Casino Royale, and he's really psychologically damaged about life and about his job and about women. It's a very interesting character. I don't have a problem exploring his psychology. The problem I have is when you attempt to actually resolve his thing and try to give him a cathartic weeping release. That's not him. In the books, he's never resolved. That's his damage, right? That's what keeps him going to the next novel, is that, if you go back and read the original Moonraker, he actually really likes the girl in Moonraker, and he really wants to be with her. And at the end, he discovers that she's with another guy and she was never going to be with him, right? And the book talks about how his heart was beginning to open up and warm up around her and become like a normal person. And when he sees that he's not going to have her, he goes right back to ice cold, and his hatred comes back. That's really complex. It doesn't go to, oh man, I'm sorry. I mean, it doesn't go to that. It goes to this guy's fucked up, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I greatly look forward to what your take on the movie is going to be when you've seen it. So looking forward to that roundtable that we'll have on that matter in a few days here.
Yeah, I'll try to put out. I'm a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little bit slow here for the last few days. I'll try to put out initial reaction piece on my Patreon for my subscribers, and then I definitely want to build up on that on Midnight's Edge. So
yeah, I'll greatly look forward to that.
Mhm.
And also Jesse Miller at the Crow's Nest points out that see, all the cool people loved Moonraker.
Yeah.
And Craig Walter, I see in the chat, says never did see Spectre. Well, here's like the thing: No Time to Die really is Spectre Part 2. It's very much so the direct follow-up to it.
And I didn't like Spectre, and I thought I would like Spectre. I didn't.
No one liked Spectre.
I mean, I thought the casting was inspired, all that stuff, and then the story it felt like a hollow story for a Bond movie.
Yeah, I agree with that, and this is kind of more of the same. So talk about like the whole era of Craig's Bond dropping the ball in the.
Can I ask this? Can I ask
sure.
this, does he at least bang somebody besides? Does he bang at least more than one chick in this movie?
No.
Well, whatever. That's the whole point.
One of the biggest complaints I've heard is that it's the least Bond of all the Bond movies. I mean, and I have not seen it, so I can't really.
Yeah, he does bang a chick, but he had banged her before.
But
that seems like slumming it to Bond. Boy, that joke fell flat.
I got a cold, man. I'm not catching jokes. No, I mean, the formula is the fun of it. He bangs the bad chick at the beginning, and he bangs the good chick at the end. That's the formula, right? Yeah. And it's a fun formula, and both chicks love it. That's the formula of it. Whatever.
Yeah. We do have a couple of member comments or what do you call them? Because these are special messages the members can send to us. They don't show up on the StreamYard side, but I caught them on the chat side of things.
Yeah, good thing that you did. And YouTube doesn't have a repository for them. It's unbelievable. We have no way of catching them unless we happen to catch them as they come up on like a third window. So but before them, the one that we have on screen. Tom, can you say this one?
Sure. Waddle D's nuts. Thanks so much, Andre. Says, did you hear about Letitia Wright's comment? Letitia Wright, sorry, about the jab. Thanks to Mr. Pasha, my first thought was another blow to Feige, another rise for Chapek. And you should have saved that one for last because that's going to get us into the main topic here. But Mr. Tickletrunk, who's been a member for 6 months, actually 7 months today, it looks like.
Yeah, so Waddle will get back into that.
We'll answer this.
He just sent me a thumbs up with a turtle. Thank you so much. Mags, who's been a member for 7 months as well, says Clownfish TV posted their daily dismal Disney morning. They can't wait to get into Cameron. I can't wait to get into Cameron, the resident seer's thoughts. So there we go. That sets us up for the first bit of news this morning. And I sent this to you, like 3-4 days ago, Andre, maybe a couple more.
Yeah, something like that.
Somebody had tagged us on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
But when
because this is a commentary from WDW Pro. And this is a commentary on a Hollywood Reporter article. Now, this whole article, Knives Out for Chapek, that's from That Park Place, and you will find this article linked in the description, right next to Kamran Pasha's Patreon page and other important links. So go check that out. Go follow That Park Place. That is where WDW Pro, notorious and renowned Disney insider, is posting right now. And what he said there, he's basically referencing this article from the Hollywood Reporter. And in this article, they talk about basically how Bob Iger didn't really want to leave his post at Disney, and he thought that he would, for all intents and purposes, continue to serve as the de facto manager of Disney, while Chapek would serve as a glorified COO, basically like the finance guy, although he'd have the title of CEO. So I stand by my comparison to before to what happened over in Russia when Putin couldn't constitutionally serve any longer as president. He needed someone else to take over that role, so he stepped back to prime minister, while Medvedev served as president. Of course, there was no real question about who had the actual power. And indeed, the moment when Putin could step back into power as president, well, that's when Medvedev quietly stepped back and assumed the role that Putin had before. So yeah, it was all no question who was the real king there, and that's obviously what Iger thought. Fortunately for him, Chapek had his own ideas about running the company, and that is something that rubbed a lot of people in the club the wrong way. Yeah. Kamran, can you take us through this article and what's really going on here?
Sure. So why don't we start for a second with the Hollywood Reporter article, because that's the one that WDW.
Yeah, it's the one we have here on screen.
Yeah. So so this article is this lengthy piece here talking about essentially how the effort to transition Bob Chapek into power, and Bob Iger, who came back in very unceremoniously, took, Chapek had appointed in February 2020, as the article points out, and then literally within about 3 or 4 weeks, Bob Iger's like, well, I'm back, right? I'm in charge again, right? And it was very unceremoniously done, and it was a bizarre thing, which was really bizarre in any company, bizarre, one of the biggest companies on the planet, right? It was very strangely done, and they used the medical events on the planet as the excuse of that. But this article is, in my opinion, and this is where I'm going to differ with the analysis article that you're referencing by Mr. WDW Pro, right? Which is, I don't think this is a hit piece on Chapek, right? It is talking about the challenges that Bob Chapek is facing in exactly the ways that we've talked about on this channel, which is that, and it's very clear in this, it's interesting because we've said this here on Midnight's Edge, and I've said this, which is that Bob Chapek is not a friend to the talent. And that's actually a good thing in a world where we've seen that the club has really guided Hollywood.
Becoming evident.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I say, and that's becoming evident in the headlines and everything that's going on now and what we're seeing here. And no, I think you're right on one point is, honestly, I think it's kind of irony. And I kind of hope that it doesn't fall in Bob's favor, because basically what's happening to him right now is exactly what he did to George Lucas.
Yeah. We're talking about Bob, which
Iger. Yeah, because Bob Iger's like, okay, here you go, hands it over to Chapek, but then he's like, oh, but I want to still control it, so he just reinserts himself, right? Well, he sat right there and told George, it doesn't matter what deal we make with you, I want it to where I do not have to. We're not beholden to whatever you want to do, George, right? Because George's idea was, okay, you're going to come, you're going to buy Star Wars, you're going to give me a bunch of stocks, and I'll still make it for you. And he's like, no, we don't want you, George. Remember? And that's kind of what he's doing. He's self-inserting himself here when Bob Chapek's like, I'm trying to do my thing, Bob Iger. And Iger's like, no. You got to do it like I did it. Right? Like, so he needs to have that sit down talk like he had with George Lucas.
And I'm actually going to suggest this. I'm going to make a suggestion, because I've watched how these trade articles, we've talked about Midnight's Edge. I've been called the seer because I prophesized a lot of these articles. So, we had another article in Hollywood Reporter that came out in the spring, which we talked about on this channel, which talked about how that was establishing how he was, Bob Chapek was attempting to assert control and was attempting to put major internal figures, implication being like Kathleen Kennedy, like Kevin Feige, under shorter term contracts, that he could control them. And so that to me had been his warning shout out that this is what I'm doing, town, get ready, right? So it's very interesting now, near the end of the year, 6 months after that article, that this comes out. And it's positioned as Bob Iger's long goodbye, right? I'm going to suggest that the long goodbye is actually over. I'm going to suggest everything that's been appearing in the Hollywood Reporter has been seeded by Chapek and his camp to prepare the town for the changes that are already in the works and already done. I think once he had established his power move that happened after after Kathleen Kennedy gave him the excuse, once she had created the Gina Carano nonsense by firing Miss Carano and created a PR drama and a loss of subscribers drama for him, he finally had the sword he needed to act. And so by the time the Hollywood Reporter article had come out saying he was thinking of asserting control, he already was asserting control. So it was something that was telling the town, preparing the time psychologically for something that was already in the works behind the scenes. So this article coming out now suggests to me that Bob Iger is actually out. That he's actually out, and it's preparing the town for that action. This is the actual announcement, in my view, that Iger is already out and that Chapek has solidified control. But it's being presented in this way. Again, Chapek being the Sun Tzu guy, as I've asserted, he's presenting it as he still doesn't quite have a full hand on the ball. He doesn't fully in control. And that's a way for him to do two things. One, it is to keep his enemies thinking, keep his enemies from thinking that that he's completely got his foot on their knee. And the reason for that is it's because this will allow them to, anyone who's stupid enough to not know the dynamics of what's happening will act against him and he can crush them, right? Like Mr. Kevin Feige tried to do, right? So this sends out an alert for him that, I might still be vulnerable. So bring all the idiots out who think that's the case. So I know who they are and they're finished, right? And it's also to psychologically get the town having the narrative that Bob Iger is finished. We actually haven't had that narrative yet, right? That didn't really appear in that earlier Hollywood Reporter article that Bob Iger was no longer the shadow boss, right? It was saying that that Chapek is trying to come out of that shadow. Now it's actually saying things like Bob Iger's long goodbye. To me, this is a done deal. And the reason I'm going to give for that, why it's a done deal, is look at who has the final say in this article. Or at least one of the near final say. When you go through all of the people in the article complaining about Chapek isn't good with talent, essentially he's not good with the club, but who has the say to round it out? You have this guy, Hal Vogel, of Vogel Capital Management, an investor, right? Who says, I'm going to quote it, says, "You can't blame Chapek for doing that. He had to make his own imprint on the company pretty quickly, or he would not have been effective or respected. I think he had to move as forcefully as he could." And then you have a couple of sort of like final statements from Bob Iger because it's allegedly a Bob Iger piece, right? But that to me is the punch of the entire article. As a former journalist myself, when you write and in news reporting, you're very careful of your own, because the idea that we're not slanted, of course, we're human, we're slanted. And as a writer, sometimes it's an editorial slant you're being told to have, and sometimes it's your personal slant. But the way you end the article is the punch of how the point you want to make. So that's what I'm saying is I think ending it with the investors means that it's over. Then the investors, okay, here are all the grumbling complaints of the actors and the egotistical studio heads, the club, but now the investor has the final say. That's how the article essentially ends.
And Mexican
yes.
Mike points out another point that I thought was extremely hilarious because they were like, Bob Iger is basically saying, don't trust the numbers. Don't trust the numbers.
I saw that. It's idiotic.
Mike, thank you so much for the $25 super chat, Mike.
Thank you, yeah.
But he could have just popped in here and said it himself. But he goes, this article details the annual Disney exec retreat where Iger was telling the board not to listen to Chapek's number crunching. Now, is this the same one that we saw the pictures come out of where he was standing by Bob and some other guy? I think so.
It could be, and he looks uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable,
So Iger's parting advice, bye-bye, LOL, great job, Cameron, Andre, and Tom. Thank you. Yeah, and that was what was funny, is he's basically saying, don't trust what he's saying about these numbers, especially when it probably comes to things like all these properties where Chapek's probably coming in and saying, look, this woke shit ain't working, or things to that effect. I have a feeling.
I think that's absolutely right, and I want to thank Mike for presenting that, because I saw that, and Mike being a numbers guy himself, I immediately understand why his eyes focus on that, because that's crazy. But it's also reflective of where we have been culturally under the Iger regime for over a decade now, where basically don't look at the numbers, don't look at the number of Hans, at the number of Solo not making money, don't look at the number that Kathleen Kennedy is throwing away and reshooting an entire movie from scratch and wasting and creating these massive budget problems and firing directors. Don't look at these numbers, right? And the board's job is to look at the numbers. So this is a dig. This is almost like a scoop to embarrass Iger, because it makes Iger look like a fool. He's telling the board there, don't look at the numbers. It's a revelation of the nonsense Chapek has to deal with. Right? This article is very strategically done because they don't want to agitate everyone.
It's not just don't look at the numbers, it's don't trust the numbers. I think it's the more key term. Because in a way, he's basically saying don't trust Chapek, right?
Correct. That's exactly what he's saying. But then trust what? What do you trust? If you don't trust the numbers, what do you have to trust? And the idea is you have to trust my relationships, my connection. You have to trust the club, right? That we know what's going on. This is a reflection of a mindset that is not just in the Hollywood industry. Hollywood is a reflection of power structures throughout the world, particularly Washington, D.C. This is a reflection of what we're seeing out of the power structure of Washington, D.C. is that don't trust the numbers, trust this person. Trust this person to tell you what's good for your health. Trust this person to tell you how to organize society and all that stuff. Don't actually look at the data. Don't trust the data that's showing the consequences of those decisions, right? So this is very much an oligarch's perspective on things. Don't trust the numbers that show that a feudal society doesn't benefit 99% of the population. Don't trust that, right?
Well,
because I'm one of that 1%. That's a feudal lord.
Well, it just kind of shows. I mean, to me, it just kind of comes full circle with who Bob Iger really is in the end, right? Because he has done nothing but, like, you read his book and he's like acting like he's the savior of Disney and he's going to take it back to what it, the glory days of what it used to be. And then we fast forward to Chapek being put in position. And what is the first thing Bob does? Try to insert himself. Right? Like, I mean, that's all he's done since day one. So clearly he does not like this guy. So I don't know what the deal is or why it is that because I have to believe that Bob Iger was one of the main says or the final say in who
maybe he wasn't. Maybe
that's what I'm curious about.
Because here's the thing that with the board and everything like that, because they say right here that Bob Iger, he felt that he wasn't paid enough because he had success after success after success after
that motherfucker
success.
Made how much?
But that is a truth in need of some modification. The 4.0 billion acquisition of Star Wars, that hasn't paid for itself. That's still in the red. To say nothing about the Fox acquisition.
But you've hit it. You've hit the issue, Andre. It's so obvious there. Give me more money and don't trust the numbers that would suggest I don't deserve the money, right?
Yeah, this whole thing it is like a little kid screaming and kicking on the floor. And I feel like right now Chapek is just like dad, just standing there watching the kid having the conniption fit, just waiting for it to end. Like, and I'm starting. This is what's sad is I shouldn't give a shit about Bob Chapek. From what I've heard about him and everything I've heard about him, I shouldn't like the guy at all. But I'm starting to kind of feel sorry for him at this point.
Well, I'm going to give a different perspective on that. I don't feel sorry for him. I really like this guy. I don't
feel sorry for him in the truest sense, but I mean, in a sense, like, just let the guy do his fucking job and let's see what he can do. That's where I'm at.
But I'm suggesting this article is proof. This article is a hit piece on Bob Iger. That's the mistake the WWE Pro is saying. This is a hit piece on Iger. It makes Iger look like a buffoon. It really does. Look, if we're reading this article and going, some of this stuff sounds stupid. Mexican Ironman's writing that. What are you talking about? Don't trust the numbers, right? You think the guys at Vanguard aren't reading this article going, what the hell is this crap? Is this what Chapek has to deal with, right? This is a hit piece on Bob Iger that he should be moving on. And I'm suggesting it comes out now because he's pretty much finished. It came out now exactly because that Scarlett Johansson surrender was really, that's the turning point of the war, man. I mean, it's, Feige, who's the major sword of the club being used internally, maybe ultimately we're going to discover this was not even Feige. This was Bob Iger using Feige, right? Maybe there's another layer of chessmanship going on here. And maybe that's what the revelation of this article is, that Feige is just, we think poor Scarlett Johansson was a sucker in Feige's game. Maybe Feige's a sucker in Iger's game. I mean, that's the first time I've said that. And I think that might actually be what's really happening here, because we haven't heard crap from Feige at all, but we're here now seeing this article come out, which makes Iger look like a buffoon and makes people reading it want to go kick this guy out. They're having the emotional reaction that Tom is describing. That's its purpose. It's not to make Chapek look like he's floundering. He's not floundering. He put this out.
Yeah, because I was thinking the same thing. Reading this thing here, the worst thing that they say about Bob Chapek is that Bob Iger, he was a people's and relation man. Like, and they say like someone who, and they quote someone who is not a fan of Chapek, saying that the difference between the lunch of the two is when you go to lunch with Bob Iger, he's like, "How can I help you? Did you watch this thing on Netflix?" And all of this small talk and never evidently getting to the point, because at no point did he say that they actually got to any point. Whereas
but he got manipulated. He was manipulated
exactly.
by that glad handling, which is how the club behaves. They manipulate you with glamour and hang out with this movie star at the party and maybe come to certain Eyes Wide Shut parties, I mean, but that's how they manipulate you, right? And then they get you to feel like you're cool, and then you end up in their trap. Whereas Chapek is like, yeah, the numbers don't add up. So let's have
exactly. And that's what they said. Like, whereas, for instance, going out for lunch with the cold fish Bob Chapek, he was like, okay, pleasantries for 60 seconds. Oh, I got the new house in Palm Springs. All right, down to business. And honestly, from the board's perspective, that's the person you want. That is someone who shows initiative.
This is the mature adult, right? Iger sounds like a buffoon in this article. He sounds like an immature crybaby, right? Who won't let go of his binky. I mean, that's what he sounds like.
Well, and haven't you been saying for a while, Cameron, that Hollywood Reporter has been more on Chapek's side and the rest of
I've said that from the
with Iger.
I've been saying that on the Midnight Edge since that Hollywood Reporter article came out, because Deadline has been very clearly pro the club. Deadline, Variety's tried to be a little bit more in the middle, but Variety and Deadline are owned by the same company, Penske, right? And so Variety's trying to sort of not agitate anybody, whereas Deadline has been very aggressively pro the club, since it was taken over from poor Nikki Fink, who was aggressively anti the club, and then it's amazing what her website has become. But so the Hollywood Reporter has been the chosen place. That's and I said this here. Why did Scarlett Johansson, in her surrender to Bob Chapek, why did she give her comments and quote only to the Hollywood Reporter? Because that's the trade that has allied itself with him. That's why this coming out here cannot be a hit piece on him. This is his mouthpiece organ. It's a hit piece on Iger.
It certainly does have all the hallmarks of that. I agree with that completely. So what do you think is going on right now? Because now then things have suddenly turned. Here we have something that can be construed as a hit piece on Chapek, but when you look at in detail, it is Iger that comes off looking the worse for it. What do you think is the current status right now? Because this is one thing that WDW Pro is pointing out, that Chapek clearly has a lot of powerful enemies in the club, and he also referenced in his posting the whole Kathleen Kennedy situation, which at least publicly still is unresolved. They haven't said anything that one way or the other. And he also brought that up, but that here Chapek is going to have to make his mind up soon, one way or the other, because if he loses, he's only going to get more and more enemies.
So this, with no disrespect to WDW Pro, I don't know whoever that is. I know that they've been
really, really good scoops. So
they get some really good scoops. But this piece, with no disrespect to them, because I don't know them, I'd love to talk to them, right? Because it sounds like they're really connected. But there's no scoop in that piece here. There's just that personal. I think he's got a lot of enemies. I've been saying that for months, right? He's got a lot of enemies. I've been saying that on Midnight's Edge for months, that the club is trying to get him. So that's not in any way a scoop, right? I'm actually gonna. There's no information. If WDW Pro has information on what's happening with Kennedy, he's certainly not sharing it, right? Or she, whoever this person is not sharing it. And so we're left with the impression that all this is unresolved. I'm going to suggest, and I'm going to go out on my Pasha Seer limb here, that it is all resolved. And we're seeing that in the press, that Ms. Kennedy was resolved months ago. That was resolved, when the Atlantic article came out, that had already been resolved. That she had essentially been told, here's some money. This is how we're going to play it out for you. You maybe get another year and a half, to mess around with Indiana Jones. Shut up and don't say anything more and leave Star Wars alone. And then the Atlantic article comes out to tell everyone that the narrative has changed. I'm going to suggest that this coming out after Scarlett Johansson capitulated and settled before even getting to Discovery, which she could have used as the terrifying sword of finding out the truth in emails, right? Because nobody in Hollywood wants to come out, right? She settled when she saw that Shang-Chi had underperformed and had undercut her entire legal claim that she had lost money on Black Widow. That was when she settled, and that was, what, a week ago? And now suddenly this article comes out within a few days of that event, which is now putting into people's mind in Hollywood, Bob Iger needs to go. That's because Bob Iger is gone. That's because Bob Iger is already gone. He's had his, whether he's still getting some kind of income or whatever his shadow title is, he's gone in the same way that Kathleen Kennedy is gone. And now the town is being told to think in those terms of Bob Iger's long goodbye, that it's over, right? I don't believe that Chapek is still under threat from the club. I think that was finished when Scarlett Johansson capitulated. And then this is the cleanup article now to start changing the narrative of the industry and make it look like Iger is this immature person who's not letting go of the reins, and he's not putting data first. He's putting his ego and his personality first. Everyone in Hollywood understands that everyone in Hollywood knows how many projects are made because someone is sleeping with somebody or someone is somebody's friend or nephew or whatever and loses money. Everyone knows that. That's the world we live in. Now it's being presented that way that Chapek is trying to make money. That's because to me, this is finished. This is already done. And we're now having the narrative being changed to get the town ready for Bob Iger's official retirement party, because that's already has a date on it, in my opinion.
Exactly. And no, I think you're getting, I mean, honestly, we won't really know or ever know about some of this stuff, but I think you're spot on. I mean, we're starting to see more and more evidence to support what you've been saying, Cameron, and Script Doctor and Andre and a few others, and even a few things that I've said here. It seems to be more and more like this seems to be the case. And at this point, I mean, I think you're right. I think Iger is kind of like a toothless shark. You can sit there and talk all day in the press, but when it really boils down to it, Chapek has the keys at the end of the day. Now, I think the bigger question is, I think you and I and others have been asking ourselves is he going to survive this? He may still win the war, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win all these battles. I mean, they may oust him at some point. Like, it's very clear, especially with that one article that came out, and I found a few others before this from the last time you came on, where there's a big narrative they're trying to push against this guy. And again, I'm not saying that the guy probably doesn't deserve a lot of it, because we've heard a lot of what he's done to the parks. We know the kind of, cutthroat attitude he has towards a lot of things. But as we've said, sometimes you need a guy like this to come in and kick some ass, right? Like he's that old gruff cowboy that you kind of want to forget about when, times are nice. But when those bad guys come roaming into town, he's the kind of guy you want to go knock on his door. It sounds like, at least in this situation.
He's a Clint Eastwood in this situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's dirty harrying his way through. I don't think he will be ousted. I think that I'm going to hold on to my opinion until now he's ousted. Okay, then I'll be like, I was wrong. I'm a human being. I was wrong. But I believe he's solidified his power, and he's just using the media to embarrass people like Iger and the club that is putting its ego above the money, which is his whole point of why he was put there, was to put the money back above the ego. So I don't think he'll be ousted, but let's say he is. Doesn't matter. FDR didn't see the end of World War II, Right. Truman was put in place to finish that out. So if he's ousted, or if somebody tries to bring out a Me Too thing, which I think is unlikely, they would have already used it by now if he had something like that. If he had some, I don't think he's been to the same parties. So I don't think they got the videotapes on him. So I don't think they have that. But let's say there's something comes out that's removed him. Investors aren't going to stop. This is their effort. I mean, he's just the front of the investors. They take out the front, they'll put another front because they got the money for it, right? And the industry is buckling right now. So they have the money. Vanguard and all these places have the money for this. So they'll put somebody else, will, even this article makes it clear, this guy wasn't the club's choice. This wasn't Iger's choice. The article makes it, what I've said for some time. This wasn't Iger's chosen successor. This was foisted on him. And the implication being, well, who could foist it on him? The guys who own the company, people who have the largest shares, which are these fund managers, right? They foisted this guy. You remove him, they'll foist another guy, right? And these people are not going to lose money. They're tired of it. The way the world is right now, there's no time for that.
Exactly. There you go. That is, I think those are some very astute observations. And you were saying the whole time that you thought that Chapek was going to come out on top of all this.
Yeah, I still
So,
do.
and that is what seems to be happening. That he has so far solidified his power, and he is more entrenched than he was. But of course, now comes the real fight, namely the fight against the club.
Yeah.
To bring back Disney profitability.
And that's what this article is. It's now presenting to the town the club's time is over. It's making it very clear that before, remember the early article was all about him attempting to regain control of independent studio heads and executives, right? So, and I had said that was the shadow war against the club because those people are all representatives, Kathleen Kennedy, Mr. Feige. They're all people who go to those cocktail parties, right? But now it's actually stating this is all about the club. It's stating that in this article. This is about, powerful people who are egocentrical, who are putting their egos over the monetary success of this company, and that Bob Iger knew how to glad handle those people and give them what they want. And that's not objectively a good thing for any company, certainly not in this environment. And don't trust the data, as Mexican Iron pointed out. If there's anything that should make any investor, we've got people who have Disney shares here in the chat, right? That if there's anything that should scare the crap out of you about Iger is that, right? Telling the board don't trust the data. That's the value of your stock. That's
not just that. It's like the desperate freak out of a man who clearly knows he's wrong, right? Like. Yeah. Don't trust the only evidence in front of your eyes. Believe in me. Have faith in me.
Right? Exactly. We have another panelist in the wing here, but before we bring him in, Kitamed wonders, Chapek not being part of the club, how did he get the job?
Very, very simple.
Well, actually, because our guest may be able to answer that too. As well.
Yeah, we can I'll give my perspective. Bring our guest in as well. My perspective is very simple. That because he's not in the club, at the end of the day, it still is structured as a public entity, and there's multi-billion-dollar funds that own huge shares of this company of Disney, who were unhappy over the last decade, especially with how Lucasfilm performed, because they've been told it was going to bring them this level of profit. Their model said it was going to bring them this level of profit, and as far as we know, it's still in the red, right? And so that's enough for big investors, BlackRock, Vanguard, all those people to say, no, we need a guy in charge who's going to care about our money. And that's what happened because he ain't part of the club. So that's objectively what happened. But the club is still struggling against those guys. They don't feel they owe anything to anybody. Certainly not people who claim it's that moment from the Batman movie where what's his face? Bane says, you think money gives you power over me, right? That's how they see it, right? And you think money gives you power over me, but they're not Bane. Money does give people power over them. And that's the thing they're going to learn. So, yeah. So let's bring on our guest.
Yeah. So with us this morning is the lovely Culture Casino.
Hey, Cameron.
He may not be a woman, but he definitely has a lovely head of hair.
Well, thank you.
And you may be able to kind of help us get an idea of how Chapek got this role, right, Culture?
Well, okay. So traditionally in the way the Disney company works, and this is just how the structure happens within, they bring somebody into Parks, Products, and Experiences, which was, unified under Iger's tenure. In a way that position, usually the parks person was originally that would be the person that would move up in the chain. That's always the way that it would go. Before Chapek, you had somebody named Tom Staggs, who went on to form a bunch of other, special investment packs and stuff like that. That have been, successful, hit and miss, whatever. But he left the company because his path was being blocked by Iger. Iger wasn't moving up and moving along fast enough for him. Also, he was the reason that they spent almost $2 billion on their next gen products just for the theme parks that didn't add anything other than the magic bands and the advanced vacation tracking. Again, sold to investors at that time by taking more money out of the pockets. But that's usually the transition. So next in line was the retail-minded Bob Chapek, who got into that position. He seems like the likely person. He's got a good eye for numbers, as far as that goes. But he's very retail-oriented. And if you knew in the Disney structure way back when, he's essentially Paul Pressler reborn. So, but when Chapek was moving up, through the ranks, he was having continued success with his retail approach to things. And they were constantly ramping up sales on everything from the cruise lines to the resort sales to DVC, which is their real estate empire that they're building, with your money, if you're an investor in that, Disney Vacation Club, and so on and so forth. So that's everything that's going. And keep in mind now that as Cameron said, he's 1,000% right. 64% of Disney is owned by institutional level investors, these big funds, and he's not wrong. You have BlackRock and many others that are invested in this. Now, BlackRock has made some really silly investments lately, but Disney's not one of them. One of the primaries, and you will always hear them on an investment call, is JP Morgan. So JP Morgan, however, and this is where I might diverge a little from what Cameron is saying, JP Morgan is driven right now, and they've publicly stated as much, by stakeholder capitalism. So they're trying to lean deeper into this idea of social change, social engineering.
I'll have some comments on that. You're right. I want to hear more about this. Yeah.
So as one of the primaries, they have quite a bit of board influence. And Cameron knows this. When you put a slate in place, I mean, you're getting together with these people. They want to put their specific party in a position of power, depending upon how the board is broken down. And it's weird because Iger got put in that newly created place after he left his position for Bob Chapek into this chairman of creativeness or whatever. I forget what the title was, but it was like it was essentially a position that would allow him to puppet the strings. So I mean, this is he'd be the puppet master, and it didn't really work because Chapek is trying to solidify his position. And where I agree 100% with Cameron is Chapek is a numbers dude because he's retail minded. So he is diametrically opposed to Iger, who was trying to acquire all these creative properties in order to tell stories in a particular way. Now, this is something new for Iger because he wasn't really turned in that direction. Somebody turned him in that direction. But when he got turned in that direction, we started to see the failures of things as it went. So it's the downturn actually started during one of their heights. I mean, I know we couldn't see it, but it was already starting to turn before we headed into this global crisis that we experienced. And again, that's why they were putting Chapek in place, which is, bad news for theme park people like me, good news for the movie side people, studio people like y'all. So, but it's an interesting thing, and that's where he came from. So I hope I answered that question, or I just went on long-winded.
You answered it really well, and I just want to add it's sort of a one more point onto it.
Yeah.
It's very important that you raise the issue of JP Morgan because what we're seeing is that even within even within financial institutions, there is this culture war happening. And JP Morgan, as we know, I mean, this is part of old Wall Street, right? And there is an element within old Wall Street, within Goldman Sachs, and all these characters, right? I mean, I remember Merrill, all those, exactly. And all of these characters that has, I'm going to give my opinion on this, that very much wants to see a feudal society and has pushed the economics and the culture, that has used culture to push a certain economic plan for the future of America that will create a divided society, divided racially, divided economically. I went to Tuck Business School, Dartmouth.
Yeah, I do. I know.
Well. Yeah, and so my classmates were great, but I interacted with a lot of people from that world who were, when they saw a little brown Pakistani guy who had risen up from nothing, right, and had been a journalist before he got to business school, right, and not been a traditional part of the financial club,
right, they
were very hostile to see me rising in that. Just like the hostile experience in Hollywood. It's my whole journey's been showing up at the places I don't belong, right? So I was there, and it'd be fascinating to watch these people become increasingly uncomfortable, like in job interviews with me, to discover I wasn't part of the normal
club.
Of the club. You have to be a two-year analyst out of college, working at Goldman and whatever. What are you doing here? And so watch them become, and then I had a law degree and all that stuff. It was very threatening to them that I wasn't part of the system. And the obstacles that they would then place for me were quite fascinating. But I got to see their mindsets. And I'm going to share the story, which will give an insight of the JP Morgan mindset. Okay. When one of the moments I've never forgotten in business school was when an alumnus of the school, a very, very, very powerful hedge fund manager and a venture capitalist, right, had come in and he gave his talk to the students. And his entire talk was, I mean, it blew me away. His entire talk was he's laying out the economics of essentially ripping off entrepreneurs, of why it's a good idea. And he laid it out of basically why entrepreneurs are suckers that people like him will take advantage of.
Oh, yeah.
But he laid it out in those terms and he had contempt. He had contempt for those average people that come up with a new product that I will then essentially vulture capital and take. And he laid it out in these terms, and he was getting people, and he was showing this is how much money. Let's just put in his paycheck. This is how much money I made doing that last year. It's the greed is good speech.
It is. But Cameron, they went big time with it, and they went mainstream with it, and they created Shark Tank, and they do that on that show.
And that's exactly and to your excitement. Oh my God, these rich people are going to steal this dude's idea and screw him. And so those people, getting back to this, JP Morgan represents the feudal class of the financial structure, in my opinion, right? The people that I dealt with in business school who were not interested in entrepreneurialism, in market orient. They needed to control the market so that the money would come to them, and they were straight about it. So, exactly. So that's part of the club. That JP Morgan represents the club, which is the feudal class, right? A feudal aristocracy, which is what is crumbling right now.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, I mean, with their ideology, that's why you were getting what you were getting, and that they're fine pushing the social narrative because all the money eventually flows to them. And that's why you have these large investment groups like BlackRock exposing themselves to very bad investments like China or Evergrande and stuff like that. But it's just it just keep in mind, and Valiant Renegade has a super chat in there that I think is relevant, but it's just these are the ways things are being done, which is why we saw what happens when retail investors become aware of bad behavior by these people that are manipulating the markets, because we saw what happened with the stonks, right? The meme stocks of GameStop, AMC, and all that. AMC is in full recovery, and Andre has talked about this, multiple times.
To the horror of the club. To the horror of the club. They wanted that thing down. They wanted it out.
Yep, that didn't work, and because retail investors supported it, they retired a ton of debt. It gave them a lot of breathing room. They have nearly $2 billion in asset or cash assets or equivalents. So they're in great shape now. So, and that was all because of the retail investors engaging in a short squeeze, and those need to happen more often. We need to facilitate the removal of power of your club. But anyway, as far as I want to return to the subject. As far as this goes, I'm glad in one way that Chapek is where he's at. I hope he's successful in showing that money trumps the whole thing, right? The numbers are the most important because he's a numbers guy, and exposes Iger and the others for what they are. That's all I'm hoping for here.
Which is what this article has already begun, because now we're talking about it, and our viewers here. And by the way, we have over 1,300 people right now, almost 1,400, and we only have 450 likes. So people, please like this video because I think you're getting an analysis here. You're not going to get anywhere else.
Exactly. This is so true. I mean, this is master level industry analysis, which is, as Kamran says, this is beyond what you're going to get outside of legit business school, where you have insiders talking to their next generation of people, explaining what's really going on. You're getting those talks right here. So smash that like.
Yeah, no one else is going to tell you this. You're going to get the superficial level of analysis on most YouTube channels. I mean, you have somebody like Culture who's very, very knowledgeable about the internal workings of Disney. You're just not going to get this kind of analysis. You got me who's just making stuff up that seems to work out.
And, behind the scenes, we also have Mexican Iron Man, who also he knows this stuff, and we have Culture Casino, and Valiant Renegade, and he had a super chat. Thomas, that's something we can still bring up.
Yeah, I sent him the link as well. But we got a few super chats actually. Maybe we should take a few minutes here to go through some of these.
Yeah, let's do that. But let's begin with Mexican Iron Man, who says Disney board is a bunch of woke Iger morons. If Disney is to be saved, it will happen from the pursuit of profit, not the blind adherence to the woke.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's what we're talking about. It's the feudal lords versus capitalists. That's what it is. That's what it comes down to.
Indeed. And I was looking for Valiant Renegades, but that appears to sadly have gone beyond my ability to
I
get
do have it saved
up
here.
on screen. If you have it, then perfect.
And
If
well, I don't have
it
it to
in
where
the
I can bring it up on
repository.
screen. But
No, that's what I meant.
Oh no. But I also saved the member comments because I just discovered that not only do they not specially mark them on the StreamYard side, they don't show up at all.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
So,
I
okay,
just
we're
sent
gonna
the
have to
evidence
we're
of
gonna
that
have to
to
give
Andre. So
yeah, we have to get in touch with StreamYard about
we
that.
can't even
To all
accidentally
members who have
highlight them.
that have sent like member chats. We've gotten as many as we possibly could, but they don't show up in our interface. However incredible that may be, and YouTube has yet to make a repository for them.
Yeah,
so
weird.
Which is unbelievable, but it is what it is. Before we get to those, though, I want to get to Valiant Renegade Super Chat. He sent two of them. First, he said for $10, I personally can't wait to see what and how much changes at Disney over the next 2 years, once more of Chapek's plans and projects materialize, particularly on the studio and film distribution side. Agreed completely. And then he said for another $4.99, the institutional investors, i.e. major stockholders and voters, choose the CEO. In other words, the money and business people, Vanguard, BlackRock, American funds. And of course, you have some wokeness among those, but hopefully you have enough dissent even within those that they're going to see. We need money first.
But look at the example. JP Morgan is an old school financial, oligarchy that goes back a century to early days of Wall Street, pre-crash Wall Street, all this. So by the name, JP Morgan, one of the great early financiers, of America. And so that has, by definition, is the aristocracy of the financial world, right? Versus companies that are fund companies, mutual fund companies in particular. They're not even talking about hedge funds. They're just mutual fund companies whose shareholders are average people who ultimately have sold shares. They've sold some to institutions, but a lot of them are average shareholders like the people that are in the chat here, right? So they're answering to a different thing. JP Morgan answers to an aristocracy of the world of JP Morgan and Rockefeller and Carnegie and all of those characters, right? That's the aristocracy. The fund managers have to answer to people like Stephanie Janasek and others, who are investors who are in the chat.
Indeed. And Mike says, Tom, I sent you all the member chats in DM.
Yes, and I do have them saved here as well, and that's why I was bringing them up. Because did you read the one from Mags here already? Because we got one from Mags. You read that one earlier, so we got that one already. Yes.
Yeah, no, I did not read it. But if
we
you
did get it earlier. Yes.
Okay,
that one was
perfect.
the one about Clownfish TV and Cameron the Seer. I just want to make sure we got it. We did. Then we had Yasar Anasari, who looks like they sent in 49 pounds. Andre, I saw the new Bond movie, but I can't recall the scene where he's on his knees apologizing. I'm sure I'd remember that. Did they cut that scene?
That'll be interesting.
I was curious if maybe there is an
No. I didn't know of it. I saw it in the movie. I wasn't aware of it until I saw it. So it's there. It's in the movie. Unless we have another Rambo situation here, which could be where there are different scenes in different places.
If they cut it because they for Northern Europe, Norway, right? Because they think, okay, people in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, those are nice, liberal, progressive people that would want to see.
Well, it'd be the other way around. They left it in there and took it out here, is what I think is.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I think. They left it in there for that, and then realizing that's going to piss off the audience in Britain, which is, I'm assuming if the gentleman gave in pounds, he's from Britain, and in America, right, where these are, that's so that is so emasculating. That may have been one of those things that was from the very early cut that they debated what we keep, and we have this. Hollywood does that. Yeah. Hollywood does that, and we'll talk about that on issues of trans and gay. Hollywood does that on, you'll have the gay scene that can be cut for the Middle East and China, right? Right. We saw that now in this most recent Jungle Cruise, right? Where you have this bizarre, 3-minute scene where The Rock is talking with the characters reveals that he's gay. And it's just like, it has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. These two guys are talking like, well, that's a scene that's easily taken out, right? For other markets. And so they're very
doesn't even need to be there.
Anyway,
no,
this
yeah,
is,
like,
I will say this though. The one that he's actually apologizing to is the movie's villain.
Okay.
But clearly, that scene was written by a woman who was desperate to see him beg forgiveness for all of his sins, because that's what it is.
All right.
But within the context, as I said, there's a
fair.
context, and the context is kind of that it's a ruse and he does it to distract, but just the way that it's done. Bond has never ever done anything like that, where he's literally begging for forgiveness, crying on his knees.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's do an experiment, because for those who saw the film, was that scene in the film? Because
Please,
maybe
yeah.
just
Without revealing a lot of spoilers. Yeah.
Yeah, just
'Cause I haven't seen it.
that scene that Yasar and Andre are talking about. If the scene was in the movie that you saw, let us know. Maybe Yasar just accidentally went to the bathroom at the wrong time. That happens sometimes. You'll
No,
have,
it wouldn't surprise me. We know they edited this because the audience reaction
that's
was
what
so
I'm wondering.
poor. Yeah, and
Well,
this may
sometimes
be
it
an
has
early
nothing
scene
to
from the
do with.
audience reaction.
Well, that could be Cameron, and I would be more willing to believe that. But just for some context, like with the Rambo thing, it was just for time. Like the international version was almost 15 minutes longer, and we didn't even realize this until we got.
It was
in
so
the middle.
funny when we were talking about it, like because me and Mr. H, we had seen the extended version, but we didn't know it was different versions, and we were like, what movie did you guys see?
All right, so already, guys, we're seeing it. Some people in the chat say they saw the scene. Others said that I didn't see the scene. It's been edited.
Okay,
It's been
there
edited.
you go.
It's been edited. So hopefully
That's
I will not
great,
see
though.
the scene tonight at the AMC on Santa Monica Promenade. I hope so. Because I'm not interested.
I'm willing to go with more with Cameron on this one, that if this is the case, then they cut this scene in some places for that reason. Because Rambo just seemed to be more for time.
Yeah.
Clearly they just wanted to
which
get
was a
that-
shame
get it
because the
down to
movie
90
was
minutes.
made worse by removing that integral scene. But yeah.
But with digital distribution, right? I mean, you're in a position now where you can send each market its own cut of the film.
Exactly. Easily.
Yeah. So you could end up with LA seeing something different than, let's say, Houston.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm wondering if this is maybe one of the reasons why there's such a varied reaction to this movie.
Right.
Then it's a choose your own adventure. We're getting a choose your own adventure Bond.
Well, that's because it reminded me of was Rambo, because Matt and I were sitting there, and I mean, I enjoyed the movie Rambo for what it was, but Matt fucking hated it, and Andre and Mr. H loved it. So you had 3 against 1 in this case. Wow. And there came a point where I think it was Andre who or maybe it was Mr. H who flat out said, "What fucking movie did you watch?" Like to Matt, because they were getting into it. And it's like, we finally figured out like a week later that there was 2 different versions of this movie out there. Yeah. And it's like, how the fuck did this get past us? But they clearly can, and they probably don't want us to realize this.
Well,
yeah, and we get like some audience response. People are seeing Bond begging on his knees, crying for forgiveness in the UK and in Finland.
Okay.
Wow.
So,
but the question is, will you see it in the States? I look forward to seeing that.
Multiple people saying I didn't see that scene, because that's a scene you'd remember.
You fucking remember? Like he's begging on it. He's crying for forgiveness. There's no fucking way you're not gonna.
I mean, even in Skyfall, when you examine his past or whatever, you know, for me, the most realistic thing is when he has to go see a psychiatrist, and he's not interested in being there. And the moment the psychiatrist starts bringing up his past, his parents, he's up and he's out. That's Bond, right? Bond is not interested in playing this nonsense, right?
Well, and this is exactly what we ran into, Naked Fame, on that Rambo review. It's funny, if you go watch it in retrospect, we had no clue through the entire review. It was almost a week later we figured that out on.
Yeah, it was like days later. Like I could have caught it because you were like saying like we didn't see anything of like him and like that cowboy outfit.
Yeah, that was
and
what
of course I wasn't paying full attention because
but culture. Now I'm scared. Now I'm scared because if they are editing it for individual markets now, they think in LA is a woke city, so we got to keep the begging Beta male, right? I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go visit my sister in Houston and see
Bond
there.
was also begging in Poland and in Canada.
And it looks like if TOH saw the movie that wasn't in the version they saw.
So this is a revelation. We've actually had a revelation here on Midnight's Edge that they are intentionally editing this for different markets based on what they think the audience reaction will be to the level of wokeness.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
I wish we could prove it. If we can actually prove it, not just anecdotally, but actually, with
Well, that's
fancy
easy. Kamran, message me after you see the movie.
I was gonna say, there's a few
if
people
it's not in there, I'm definitely it's been proven. If it's I don't see that scene,
I'm definitely going to pay close attention to the film. I'm not going to get a drink before I sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
So
It is
that
a
I will
3-hour
say
movie, right?
It's towards like reasonably close to the end when
Right, of course.
he is in face-to-face contact with the villain of the piece, and the villain kind of has the upper hand, and so the villain won't fully act out his upper hand. Bond is stalling for time, and he decides that yes, then it is time to cry for forgiveness.
Way back in the day, okay, and this is in my lifetime and I'm pretty old. So way back in the day, there was a film released, which I think is awesome. A lot of people probably won't agree, called Clue, the original Clue.
Oh yeah, Clue was fun.
It was incredible. In different places, different theaters, or multiple cuts of the film, you had a different ending for each location potentially. So you could see it at one place and it was one ending. You could see it somewhere else. It was different ending. And then there was like all the conversation. When they released it on video, they released it with this is how it could have happened, and they gave you the 3 endings that they put together, and then this is how it actually happened, or it was 2 endings and then this is how it, or whatever it was. But it was an interesting time. But you knew going in that you were going to get whatever ending you got, and it wouldn't be the same as maybe somebody else saw. Now, this film has not been advertised that way, although we have seen, as we're referencing, that you can pull scenes out of films to go play better in China, right?
Well, that's because I don't think they want us to know this. That's why.
Well, but see, the minute we know, now we start to expose them and further expose the agenda that they're doing. They're building on the divide between these different places.
And let's remember, there's 3 different studios behind this film, right? There's Universal, there's MGM, and then there's Eon.
Eon, yeah.
So each of them have a say in probably some of these things too. Now we don't know this for sure. I want to get some people saying they have not seen the scene in the movie. We have more people saying they've seen it than
we have anecdotal from the chat. People are saying, most people are saying, I've seen it. It's in Ecuador. I've seen the scene.
Yeah.
So there are people showing up saying it wasn't in the cut I saw.
Yeah. I want some more proof before we definitively say it, but this could be a case like Hyperguyver says here. And this was a case of an international cut. Yeah. They had the same problem with Army of Darkness back in the day. It turned out there were 2 different endings. Yes. The international cut had a completely different ending than the version that was in the US. And now, of course, you can see that ending on several releases of the film. But this is not new if this is the case. But in this case, it sticks out because of the specific scene, if this is the case.
But the question is, if it's in individual markets because of digital delivery, then that throws the whole, international thing out the window, right? Because again, if Houston gets a different version of the film than, let's say, Vegas and Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon, right? If they all have different versions of the film, being that those are specifically released in a given market, that exposes a whole other problem in filmmaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing more people say they saw it so I'm curious if it wasn't just maybe.
You have the Mandela effect, but
you could have the Mandela effect, but the Mandela effect is usually historical. I've never seen it happen.
And somebody could just go to the bathroom at the wrong time too. So
but the Mandela effect is a real phenomenon. I talked about it with our friend Doomcock, but I've never seen it happen contemporaneously. It's usually memories of the past or something from a couple years ago. But if it's like 24 hours later, we're having different memories, that's interesting.
But it's possible because, again, right now, Hollywood doesn't make memorable entertainment because this is part of my arguments about modern film. Sure. There's no rewatchability in modern film. There's nothing there that you have to go back for. It's why you don't see people going back to see Black Widow 6 times. It's why you don't see, people going back to see the rise of rinse of soybeans or whatever Doomcock calls it, the rise of Skywalker.
To be fair, I watched Black Widow twice. I did watch it.
I'm sorry. I apologize on behalf of all human beings.
I watched it 1.5 times. I quit watching it when it gets stupid.
Well, there you go. Well, how'd you make it to a full half?
Your point is correct, Culture. Yes.
Yeah. No, but it is one of those things. It's like I think it's quite possible for something to be so forgettable, like Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, that you're going to misplace things that are in that film, or you're going to have imagined a better version of the film in your mind and it'll be there, or you will have replaced things that were dumb. in your mind. I don't know. I think it's quite possible. Who knows though? I mean,
it could be that thing, the psychological block. I can't handle watching Bond crying.
Out.
I mean, as someone in the chat pointed out, and Bond didn't even cry when Blofeld killed his wife, right? That's canon, right? And he kept it together, right? He got revenge when he kept it together. And
I would stress there's a context to this.
There's a reason. We understand this is not him. This is him acting.
But still,
just that degrading thing.
I'm starting to question a little more because I've only had like 2 people even say that they've had this problem.
Well, we'll find out tonight. I'll immediately, message you guys. Okay, come on.
Yeah. And I'll watch it and specifically look for it. So, but it just, and again, if this is the other problem. If in the context of the scene it makes sense, then I don't have a problem with this.
The context, it makes sense in the scene, in the context of the scene. But it was like extra groveling. It was more groveling than it needed to be. We've seen Bond stall for time before, and he didn't have to resort to such groveling to do it. This was like, again, it's like the whole thing with the ending of the movie. It's a questionable choice by the writers. It's the writers that I think decided that we want to hit that scene, we want to hit that ending, and we're going to write it backwards to hit that ending because we want that in there. And in so doing, but I disagree with the choice that they did to get the requested outcome.
Well, I will say this. We should bring up some of these chats, which are people. There's now something happening where people are just coming with all kinds of fun.
I love these names.
Bond titles. You only cry twice.
Cryfall.
Cry Raker, cry another
cry.
Finger.
No Time to Cry, of course, was the one that kicked it off, and that was the best one. So
Her Majesty's Secret Tears.
Cry Another Day. Wow. The Spy Who Cried on Me.
From Russia, Tears.
These are some good ones, guys. I don't know if this is true or not. I don't want to jump to any conclusions because we don't have any definitive proof that this is the case.
For your tears,
but if it is, that is a big deal. So I really am interested if this is really true, because if this is the case, then it clearly shows the bias they have and that they're not afraid to cut these movies. And we know they've already done it for other regions in certain cases, but
and in this movie we know that they had an audience reaction that was very poor. So who knows? This may have been one of their debates. What do we do with this? The audience didn't like this thing. So.
Cry pussy.
Oh no. Oh no.
Man with the golden girl.
Wow.
I love this Midnight's Edge audience is great.
Oh Lord.
Oh no. They're getting worse.
Well, since we're on the subject of Bond, let's talk a little bit of box office.
Good job,
now it did gangbusters in its opening overseas. But it's not faring as well here, it looks like. It's actually tracking below what Venom did last week.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. It's coming in 3rd place right now on the Thursday previews, and it's tracking lower than they anticipated. In fact, VR did a video on this very article actually this morning. So when you're done here, you can check that out. But yeah, look, when I saw this morning,
this isn't bad, but this isn't as good as it did overseas.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's short of Venom. And Venom is that, in that coveted, range and, that they want to get into, the $100 million 5-day. That's what they're looking for with Bond. They want $100 million 5-day.
Actually have previews Wednesday as well. I don't have the numbers for that.
There was like sneaks, there's
a few people I know who saw it, and there's a few people I know who saw it on Wednesdays. So
yeah, it had a very tiny little release. But here's the weird thing: this is the widest released Bond film ever in any territory it's ever been in. In the UK, it's set a record. Here in the States, it's on more screens than ever.
In Norway, it also set a record, and not just in screens, but in terms of actual attendance, as in physical tickets sold.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring this up is I'm thinking that this is one of those cases where I'm wondering if opening it overseas, Andre, didn't hurt the box office here, like the word of mouth got out on it.
Right.
I think too soon.
Well,
and too
already people hearing that outcome for Bond, people are like, I'm not going to go see it, right? When I heard that outcome for Bond, I'm like, this is a stab into my heart. I'm okay with him nearly going to that place, but to even leave that's the way it ends. I mean, James Bond will return. It's a meaningless comment. And that's the whole thing, going back from the original Doctor, I believe it's in Dr. No, that appears at the credits. James Bond will return.
Yeah,
and they didn't know that the movie's going to be a hit. They just believed in it, and they put it out there, and that's been the trend. And James, that's the one thing, James Bond will return. And, and I've said this before, that Bond is something special to me, and I think for a lot of people in the audience, it was the one thing I had in common with my father. My father and I were very different people. We didn't share a lot of creative tastes, right? But we loved Bond, and it was our bonding thing. We would go see Bond movies together. That's the one thing that was the moment that I could see. My dad passed away 10 years ago. For me, when I see a Bond movie, it allows me to reconnect with my dad. So when I heard that was the ending, I didn't want to go. I still don't want to go. Right. But I'm going to go and hope that maybe they will somehow erase this moving forward. But there's a scar now on this 60-year franchise that was not necessary.
And Cameron, you and I share the same experience, because for me, my grandfather's the one that brought these films to me. And, we would go for Sunday dinner, and there would be a Bond film on somewhere in the house. And I was probably too young to be seeing some of these Bond themes, but they were there, and it was something that we shared and we always talked about. And when you miss somebody like that, and you have all these wonderful things tied up with them, all these memories, you don't want to see the thing that you shared destroyed. And that's, this isn't a common experience we've all been having over the course of the last decade, or almost decade now, with films being essentially the destructor of the previous elements of the franchise. So but
it's part of, I would suggest, and I've said it on here, it's part of that club's effort to deconstruct society. It's part of it. It's the way you create a feudal society, is the very fact that you would undermine heroes like Luke Skywalker, that you would take away something like Bond, which is actually a male bonding experience, a generational bonding experience. The idea of confident, strong men passing on something to their children, to their grandchildren, is something that the feudal structure doesn't want. Right. And so that's an ideological thing. It isn't about any of the things they claim.
It's also why history is limited to the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, that's, they stopped educating people on all of the things that came before so that they can repeat them. They want to repeat them. They want to have problems. But anyway, so no, this film, like I said, it had such a wide release. I think they were anticipating bigger numbers. I think they were hoping that it would follow the trend of Venom, and it may not. I mean, it's too early to tell. I'm going to say it. I'm going to use those words because I'm not going to say that it won't. But I feel like this film is going to stay in that original projected tracking in that 60 to 80 million range. I think that's where this thing's going to sit.
Yeah, I think you're not too far off there, considering
which is an embarrassment. It shouldn't be. Which is an embarrassment, which the trades will attempt to cover it up.
Oh, of course they will.
Well, what's worse is we already know it's got to make almost $1 billion just to break even now. And on top of that, we're just finding out that they spent $150 million on the campaign for this movie.
Well, that's no. This is the this is the promo campaign with the ads that share a product, right? So Aston Martin, the Omega watches, et cetera, et cetera.
So this is what they got back. Okay, never mind. I got that wrong.
Yeah. So now they're focused on any other story they can talk about.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Don't read too much into that. It's one of the things I covered this morning.
Gotcha.
But it's just, it's again. I mean, I'm leaning into the idea that they need to recover about $450 million. They need to recover about $450 million on their side of the ledger to break even, which, as you said, 900 and change on the box office.
Yeah,
that's going to be hard to do. It's going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
So, but it wouldn't matter anyway. I mean, if this film can get close, if it can hit about 800 million, then it'll be propped up as
they'll call it a success. A success based on the environment we're in, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, which is funny because you now have a couple of them, at least in one in Venom. It's quite possible Venom ends up where the previous film did, which means we're back to the 2018. You're back to 2018 as far as the box office goes, which will, that is going to throw a wrench into the machine as far as the spin cycle, because they're not going to be able to spin that anymore because they already had a film that performed that. And if Dune makes it to the US and does bonkers over here, that's another wrench in that, in that machine. So.
Well, hopefully hopefully the end result will be, however these numbers play out, will be a conversation that Barbara Broccoli is going to be having with her team, saying, this is her family's legacy and she's screwing it up. Well, this is her father's legacy. I mean, she's screwing it up. And, someone was saying in the chat, I don't know about her brother. Someone's like, her brother should take over. All I know is that she's screwing this up, right? And someone needs to have this conversation. This is your family's legacy.
Right.
You've now done something your dad wouldn't have done.
It. Yeah, you've corrupted it. I guarantee you on the Wilson family side of the equation of Eon Productions, they're probably doing the same thing. Going, was this a good move? And again, I mean, there was an attempt to save, and I'm sure you agree, Cameron, with Daniel Craig coming out and saying, hey, there should be roles equal to Bond for women. And not James Bond itself,
and for minorities, but Bond should be a man, right?
Yeah,
and that was done on purpose. That was an intentional messaging, right? And he knew he was going to get flack for that. He was told, "Here's a script, read it."
Yeah. Well, and that's the other problem is, at what point do you step away from marketing films through the actors?
Well, that's the same reason that Fukunaga came out and called him a dolphin lover, was because they're setting you up for a new kind of Bond. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think the worst of this is over, guys.
No, I don't think so either.
I think the next Bond is going to be the double shiny Bond you watch. It's going to be the flashiest, most super Skittles Bond you ever saw. Trust me.
But that is the end, though. I mean, Daniel Craig has been able to skate on the fact that a lot of us liked a lot of his performances. I still love Casino Royale. Some of the others in his thing were not good movies, but I'd like Skyfall, and so there's a loyalty to him and what he brought to a gravitas to this character, which I appreciate, right? Wow. And so that loyalty will not be given to the next Bond. So if it comes out woke, as you're saying it might, it's done. There's no investment in that.
Well, I think the killing Bond in this movie was metaphorically killing the classic white male version of him. That's what I think they're kind of signifying with this entire version of it. Yeah. And for those who don't know what dolphin lover means, well, if you've seen the episode of
we can't say it
of King of the Hill, you might know what I'm saying. But let's just say dolphins like to take advantage.
The culture that I've been culture, what I've been saying, and I know others have said this, is that the way to fix this is to just go back to the 60s, right? Just the next Bond has to be set in 1960 in the Cold War. And it's just like it's Mad Men. You don't question Mad Men that they're all smoking and they're all sexist and they're harassing their secretary. That's the world they're in, right? So don't question Bond being a ruthless killer who loves women and throws them away, right? Because that's a spy in 1960, right? That's normal. And that's the way to save it. But will they have the wisdom to do it? I don't know.
Well, and with the problem with Mad Men, the show went downhill in the latter part because they started imploding in on themselves because they started getting too aware of what they were doing. Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, no. Go back to what you were doing. It was fine relishing in that. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Things did not change as quickly as you're trying to portray them in this show. And the show just kind of went off the fucking rails because of that. And we're seeing it throughout our entire, lexicon of entertainment. And I keep reminding people that even though the tide is turning, things are changing, we've got the final right? There's one final salvo where these people freak the fuck out and they're going to try and destroy as much as they can before they get kicked the fuck out the door, right?
Yeah,
there's going to be a bunch of big more things that they're going to throw in our face.
I hope you're wrong about that. I mean, because
even if I'm wrong, that's the best part is it's the last war cry, right? It's the last they can do. They're on the way out. Me Too's shutting down.
But they can do a lot of damage on that way out. I mean,
they clearly can. So don't get me wrong.
Bond bit the dust, and we still have Indiana Jones, and
he's going to bite the dust too.
Come on. Yeah, absolutely.
And I have predicted this, and this I could be 100% wrong about this, and we'll see. I predicted that the new Indiana Jones will never see the light of day, despite how much money they're throwing into it. I know, Tom, you're like, that seems unlikely. I know it seems unlikely. I'm still predicting
see the light of day.
I don't know about that. I'm going to predict that it might get pulled, that things around Harrison Ford may get it pulled. Chapek doesn't want that movie released. He may have to. He doesn't want that.
Man. God, that would just kill the brand in such a big
exactly
way.
It. It would kill the brand. Chapek knows that.
Chapek has watched the disintegration of like 6 brands in his tenure at Parks Products and Experiences. So as the big guy in charge, I don't know. Is he going to want to lean into more destruction?
I don't. If I were him, and I've so far been able to at least gauge his behavior and in a predictive fashion. If I were him, I would use every bit of political pressure and Harrison Ford's health issues and all that stuff to keep delaying until something happens, whether it's Mr. Ford passing or something happens that makes it politically feasible for him to say to Kathleen, "I'm sorry, we just can't release it. But here's a big check. Here's a big check, and thanks for your efforts." It's just not the right appropriate thing to do.
It's been too publicly prolific, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like,
I'm putting out.
I agree that it is within the realm of our existence that it could happen.
Well, you have to have one of the most tragic things ever happen, and that's the thing is for that.
Yeah, you have to let Harrison Ford back in the pilot position of a plane, and that would be bad.
Get off my plane.
Nobody wants that to happen. I'm just saying that if I were Chapek, I'm trying to find any way possible to keep delaying this thing for the reasons that Culture's pointing out.
If I'm Chapek, I'd rather use that as, look how complete incompetent Iger was for letting this happen. Now it's my control. I wash my hands.
The damage is so far beyond Iger at that point. Then it's the loss of a golden brand.
Golden brand that they weren't using.
Lucasfilm,
it'll be blamed on him. It won't be blamed on Iger.
Lucasfilm will have then essentially been completely destroyed. You had 2 golden franchises in one purchase, and then it'll be gone, right?
Yeah,
man.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part, but it's also strategic thinking that, for the reasons Culture pointing out, Lucasfilm is dead. Then Lucasfilm is dead, and he's been put into place by investors who weren't unhappy with the Lucasfilm financial performance specifically. So he's got to be aware. I mean, he's got to get rid. I mean, I think he's made an arrangement with Kathleen, but he's also got to be aware. He knows she's crazy. He knows that. He knows she's out of control. He knows that. He knows she has a weirdo ideology that isn't even based on her life as a privileged white woman, right? He knows that. He's like, am I going to really let this thing go down? And the people who put me there are going to be like, what the fuck is happening with Lucasfilm, man? We put you there to not let this happen. You know, we already dealt with a Gina Carano drama, and now you asserted control and you shut her up, but you let her do this? It's a really dangerous line for him to walk.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Gina Carano thing, I still stand by. That was one of the things that really kind of set in motion his cutthroat attitude.
I agree.
Right? Like when he was faced with that whole thing of like, what the fuck happened here? I had no control over this. This all kind of just happened. Right?
Which is what he let the world know. I'm not in control, but I'm going to get control.
Right.
Exactly. And in the parts that he's taking control of, and I see it, Cameron, you're 100% right. He pulled in the reins on the talent. He pulled in the reins on the executives and the higher ups at all the other studios, but like Pixar, Marvel, and Disney. And that's why we're seeing a lot of resistance from Feige. I agree with you. And on the other side of it too, I see that he is doing a lot of things that are against what a lot of the Rees in the company don't like, right? Like, and that's what he doesn't want. He does not want to have a Gina Carano situation again, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Who would possibly want that?
We'll see. I've made a prediction that's really on the edge there, on Midnight's edge, but I'm still backing. I still think if I were him, I'm going to, from a business standpoint, I'm going to try to kill this thing. I just need time, and I need leverage, and I need to wait. Like it's what I wrote on my Patreon. So he's the master of the quote attributed to Sun Tzu, whether it's Sun Tzu or not, which is if you sit by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will float by. Right? He's a master of that, and so this may be a moment of him of letting time take care of what needs to be done, so that he doesn't have to act. But we'll see.
Yeah. Time will tell on that. So that's the beauty with it. In the meantime, everyone smash that like button. And Tom, can you go through the member chats, and then we'll do classic super chats?
Well, we have them kind of. I have them kind of mixed in here, so I think we can just kind of get them as they came in here. But where we left off, I believe.
Well, before that, let's do one from a member chat and mods all at the same time. Max says for $5, if KK is let go, wouldn't there have to be mass firings of her minions also? in order for Lucasfilm to come back on track. Nothing will change if not.
Yes. And most of those will leave with her. Like, especially if she's ousted in a way that is not agreed with upon by said minions, right? She'll have her big fucking Jerry Maguire moment. Who's going with me? And they'll all follow. And they'll all probably land just fine. It's not like anybody's really worried about KK. I really think the only reason she's still there, and Cameron is right about that, is that she's basically been defanged, right? Like, she has no real power left within the structure of the company.
And I want to add to that, Tom. So I've been in situations where I've worked on a show where it's clear the showrunner's about to be fired, right? I've been in that situation, right? And so what happens is when you get that sense that the boss is no longer in control, right? Then everyone starts putting their resume out, right? Everyone starts putting their resume out. And so if indeed, as I believe, that she's been defanged and has been given some kind of settlement already, and that's why she's sort of gloriously in the background now, then everyone in the company knows that she's on her way out, even if it's 18 months or 2 years from now. They know she's sitting there and she's dead woman walking. They know that. So they're going to get the hell out. I think our friend Stephanie Janisek has been hearing rumors to the effect of people leaving. Hopefully we can get her to comment in the chat about that.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
But I'm sure people are already on their way out, getting other stuff, because it's a closing door. And so
we saw the same thing over at Warner, remember?
Yeah. We're seeing right now. We're seeing right now one executive that I love, that I've worked with multiple times. I've worked with her when I was on Roswell, New Mexico. Odetta Watkins just announced yesterday she's leaving to become one of the top people in drama at Amazon, right? And she was one of the best internal people. It's a brilliant African American woman who was at Warner Brothers, one of their best people. And she just announced she's the TV department of Warner Brothers is vanishing because of the new merger, right? Everyone's leaving.
I was going to say, go back to when they first announced the merger. You had a bunch of people that were leaving.
Yep. Yeah, and it's continuing now, and some of their best people are gone. So we'll see what happens to Warner's. But that's what happens when those top people left, and so Odetta's like, all right, those top people that are still there are really defanged, so I got to move on, and she did.
No, but I agree with you, Megs. It's not so much even that you'll probably have to force them out the door. A lot of them will just leave.
Yeah, it's just your time's up. I mean, I remember twice in my career, I've had that conversation with people on my show saying it's time for all of us to get our resumes out, because this event has happened twice on two different shows. It's like, this event has happened. Everyone needs to get a job. I would talk to the assistant and said, you need to find a new job. We're not going to be here in 3 months.
Well, there's and there's parallels. I mean, think about the two people that they let go at Paramount. We were just talking about this the other day.
Giannopoulos and
Giannopoulos and his second in command. They both.
And there's even a rumor that Emma Watts is looking for a new job.
Emma is looking for a parachute. Because they all know what's about to happen there.
There's some big shit going on there. I haven't even had a chance to talk to Andre about this yet.
Yeah, those of us that are on the sidelines paying attention to what's going on are going, oh, they're going to start ditching their catalog, or they're getting ready for a sale of a certain.
It looks like
probably a sale. To me, it looks like that they're looking to ditch assets and sell off to save CBS.
Yeah, they're shifting a bunch of shit over to CBS, Nickelodeon, and all that kind of crap, and then they're going to probably sell off Paramount.
If you're Shari right now, you're going, why did I try to reintegrate these two companies again?
The idea was fine on paper. It was a wrong time.
Yeah, plus you had a lot of resistance within, right?
Yeah.
So, and then also joining us is another person who has a lot of insight on some of these things, but we're going to get through some of these super chats as well. In the meantime, Valiant Renegade is here with us.
Hey, Valiant, how's it going?
Hey, Andre, Tom, Culture, and Cameron, four of my favorite people here.
Somebody says the audio is cracking bad.
On me? Oh, hang on.
No, just in general. It was before you even came in here.
No, the audio is fine, certainly in my end for all of you.
Yeah, on our end it is, so it must be a YouTube thing.
Yeah, I'm not. At first, I thought it was me because I'm not at home. I'm not at Renegade Studios right now. I'm at the office. It's just a quiet Friday here, so I was able to jump in.
Refresh, guys.
Yeah, best we can say if they're struggling, but we really appreciate that.
It sounds fine on my end.
So yeah, you've been following the discussion. So anything to add to the Paramount and CBS situation before we move on here?
That must have been the more recent topic, the Paramount and CBS. I hopped out of the car when y'all were finishing talking up about KK and some of that stuff just a moment ago. But Yeah, as far as the earlier topics, yeah, as you mentioned, when the show's done here, I passed along some thoughts this morning in a video on my channel about the box office weekend for Bond compared to Venom, and what I think where that could go. I think both movies, it's a little early to tell at this point, especially with Venom, because really the international box office has not opened up yet, and it will not open up wide until next weekend. Venom and Bond kind of swapped places, where Bond went wide internationally last weekend. Venom went wide domestically last weekend, and now Bond is coming to the U.S. and then Venom goes international next week, so they didn't want to step on each other's toes. And
except for some markets where Venom was swapped with Dune, where Dune came like really, really early, and Venom comes similarly late. So me, for instance, I saw Dune almost a month ago by now. Won't be able to see Venom until late November.
Oh, is it that late where you are?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
I know they really staggered it out. And look, Venom's success in the first run, its first movie back in 2018, obviously the international box office was a key component. Even with taking out China, which was 269 million in 2018, that still left Venom with almost a 600 million global haul. So we really have to wait and see. Even if Venom has a sharper drop off than we'd like to see this weekend domestically, I'm not going to be comfortable making a judgment call on that one until after next weekend, when we see what the broad international market opens up.
Yeah, because you're gonna, predictably, we've seen the pattern now. You're gonna see a 50% fall off in the second weekend. Although I'm gonna be one of the people that are giving it that second weekend push. So.
Yeah, I'm going to try to, too. I wish I could go see more of these movies, but, my theater had its roof ripped off with Hurricane Ida, so I'm still waiting. But they do say that they're going to be open in time for Dune, which I'm thrilled.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, you said that in your video this morning. I was like, oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
So, but any case, as far as the rest of it goes, if y'all want to kind of hear my details on that, check the video out after we wrap up Midnight's Edge, and make sure you like it and share it out. Can always use the views. It's a big help to the channel, and this community's been so generous. I appreciate it. As far as KK, Cameron and I are pretty much on the same page. She's effectively got her walking papers. She's effectively also been, she has really been an absentee landlord with Star Wars for the last couple of years. She's there, but she's not really there. It's been mostly in the hands of Favreau and Filoni. I don't see that really changing. She gets to go through Indiana Jones with the motions and try to get that out. I think if anything, Cameron, I can understand what you're saying, but that would be a hell of an investment to just abandon. I think what they will do, it's more likely that instead of, if you've already got 150 million plus in sunk costs in producing a movie and contracts and whatnot, you're more likely to go ahead, turn around, and drop another 50 or 75 million into it to fix it than you are just to walk away from the whole 150. So there will be something there, if they're going to change it. I think that's what.
Well, but that's the question, Valiant, because we don't know if in her settlement, in her contract, she's got final creative word on Indiana Jones, or if that's something from her original contract, or if that's something that Chapek may have given her in getting her off of, Lucasfilm. All right, get her off of Star Wars. All right, you can. But if she has final creative control, he may be trapped. In that case, he has to face, do I put this out? Because she's going to screw it up.
You are correct.
You can still have places where creative control can still conflict with other things. A great example is the Halloween situation, right? Jamie Lee Curtis ran into a problem, even though she had some creative control, if not almost complete creative control over Halloween H2O. She still kept running into this issue where she wanted to kill Michael Myers. She wanted to chop that motherfucker's head off, is exactly what she said several times over. And they'd go up through the meetings and she'd read the story and she'd be like, wait, the end of the script says, Mike, somebody's messing with paper or something. I don't know if that's you,
Could be
Valiant.
that crackling. I don't know. It's not me.
Yeah, I don't know. But like, she's like, every time I'd read the script, it would always end with Michael goes over the cliff in a car, and you see her face, fire flames on her face. She's like, "Where's the scene? Oh, we'll fix it. Another meeting later, same fucking problem. Another meeting later, same fucking problem." And she's like, finally, like, I don't understand what the fuck's going on. So she goes to the head office of Dimension, and she goes, "What is the fucking problem here? I just want the ending to be me killing Michael Myers. Why is that so hard?" And they go, "Look, here's the problem, Jamie. Mustafa Akkad has it in his contract that you cannot kill Michael Myers." So there was a conflict between her creative control and something that was in a contract that they could not resolve.
But they did it at the end.
They finally did it.
They chopped his head off, but then
And
the
he
next
goes-
movie, it's discovered that wasn't
she goes-
Michael in the mask. It was
She
somebody
goes
else
in the
that
same meeting, Kevin Williamson pops up and she goes, the two words you never want to fucking hear in a meeting. What if?
Hey, it's something you don't want to hear in a you don't want to hear what if in a Disney series on Disney Plus
So
either.
I wonder if that's the same kind of thing here with Kathleen Kennedy. Is she has creative control up to a point, but then since Disney, they still have the final say on a lot of things. Probably, I don't know anymore.
Who knows? I will say this: I once interviewed with Kevin Williamson for a job, and the interview was going great until I said one thing he didn't like, and I watched the entire thing. The job just washed out of my hands right there. I just watched the body language change, and I was like, "Okay." I told my agent, "I don't think we're gonna get this one." I didn't realize that would be the trigger. It is what it is. Interesting character.
Yeah, well,
but yeah, going back to your stuff, Tom. You're right. There are other factors here. That the reason I'm saying this is that if it is ultimately a bad film that will damage and kill this franchise, if I were Chapek, I would do everything possible to find a way to delay its release, or sabotage it in some way to save the long-term value of this property. Ultimately there may be, even if that would be, there may be other pressures. He may be under that situation where it's like, I got to take this loss. I got to let the enemies take this city in order to save the rest of this. That may be what happens, right? But we'll see. I just think that guy is smarter than people realize, and I think he's seeing in multiple dimensions ahead of what people were imagining. Yeah. So if I were him, I would be planning out how to screw her at the last minute. If I were him, and I think and he's more Machiavellian than I am, and I'm pretty Machiavellian. So.
Well, and I know there's some people who are not so. Yeah, there are some people that are curious what the hell happened after. Well, if you saw the movies, they wrote the beginning of Resurrection before they even shot H2O. Kevin Williamson just came up with the beginning, and she's like, "Fine, but you got to kill me so I don't have to keep coming back and doing these fucking things."
And she's back.
And that's what exactly.
So what happened was the person that's executed is someone Michael Myers actually
completely different.
Somebody he put his mask on somebody else and cut their vocal cords so they couldn't speak. And then
it was
that poor person is mistakenly
bullshit.
killed. Yes,
it was some of the most convoluted.
I still think H2O is a good movie. I think it's
H2O is amazing, but fucking Resurrection just fucking screwed it all up. But let's get to some of these super chats because we did leave off.
Yeah, and I will say the one hope for the future of the Bond franchise beyond going back to the 60s is if they pull out another Daniel Craig movie out of their hat and do something equally convoluted there.
Which is that establishes the continuation of the character with Craig.
Yeah. Right. Which I don't think is going to happen. Until then, though, everyone smash that likes. As Max says, only 90 likes to get to 1,000.
Ooh.
Almost 1,500.
This is a live stream that deserves over 1,000 likes because we're sharing perspectives no one's going to hear anyone else.
Hopefully the sound thing has kind of cleared itself up. I think we kind of figured out it's either a YouTube or a StreamYard thing because to us on our end, we all sound perfectly fine. So and I listened for a little bit on the other end, so it's got to be something in between there. So we apologize if it's still going, guys. Hopefully it'll clear itself up. But I believe we left off with Michael Miller's super chat, if I'm not mistaken. Next Bond should be based on a Gardner book. Did we do this one? With Dalton as spin it off as an Amazon series with another character based on books. So he wants Dalton to come back as Bond in an Amazon series. Oh. Okay. I don't know if that's a bad idea necessarily, but
Dalton's a pretty old guy.
I was gonna say, unless you're doing like an Unforgiven Bond, maybe that could work.
It would be cool to see him come back and have him play M.
Yeah.
Get one of the old Bond actors to come.
That's what I mean. Yeah, like an Unforgiven kind of Bond.
Dalton is an underrated Bond. I think he's a very good Bond, and I don't think he got the credit he deserved for that.
I liked him. Yeah.
Good. And it
He
sounds
sort
like
of
the sound.
captured the original Bond from the books in many ways.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Like, I've never read any of the original books,
Oh,
but
you gotta
from
read
what
the
I
books.
gathered, he came closer than most others in capturing
And
the Bond of the books.
and
And the funny thing is that one of the KGB guides that he fought looks so much like Daniel Craig. So yeah.
yeah, it was Dalton's Bond, especially in the last film he was in. That's the brutal James Bond take that you would have found in the books, I think.
Yeah. I mean, James Bond is a dangerous psychopath in the books, right? I mean, he's a screwed up guy, and that's what makes him interesting.
That's very true. Like I said, I mean, I next to me, because we've been talking about it so much, I have the box set of the Blu-rays next to me. Of course, I have all the VHS tapes and I have all the DVDs, and I kept buying Bond in any format I could. And so I mean, it's just like Star Wars and any of these other things. It's been such a huge part of my life, and I want this film. I find myself going in saying, I want this film to be good. I want to not have it, destroy this character. I just hope that's the case.
We're probably lucky that Sony controls home distribution, I believe, on the home videos now, because we kind of busted MGM for up converting their Blu-rays. But anyway, moving on. That's a whole nother conversation. Thank you for that, Michael Miller. Lonnie Holcomb says, Cameron. Are you still there, Cameron? Or did you have to
I'd step away for a second, but I'll wait for the super chat. Yes.
Okay, we'll do the super chat first. Cameron says, in short, Chapek is doing what is referred to as baiting of fire to illuminate who his enemies are so he can identify and isolate them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, that's what I believe is part of the agenda behind this Hollywood Reporter article, is for any idiots who actually think that this is a sign of weakness, that Chapek might be out because of it, is to start acting. I think Feige has I don't know if he's bent the knee, but he's certainly been kneecapped, and so he's going to take a break from further attack. But others who might be thinking maybe Chapek is bad for business, maybe he's bad for the club, to identify themselves now by acting. Because I think that article only comes out when you know that they won't be able to do anything to you. So you get these idiots to put their heads up so you can have the sniper take them out.
Yeah. And Tom, before we move on, we have some even older super chats here that I want to get
I missed
first.
I'm sorry.
Before we continue from where you were, the day was started off by who says for $9.99. Hi, gents. Hello, everyone. Heading out to day 2 of New York Comic-Con. That's awesome. I hope you will enjoy it. And then we had Darius Munchausen sent us a Popcorn Super sticker. And Spider Unlimited said, hey, y'all, saw No Time to Die. Happy for reshoots and fans being heard.
I think we got that one. Yeah.
Lots of odd choices, though. And then we are back to where we were.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought. I didn't think I missed that many. Then we had Boyo Negative BG who sent in 10 BGN. What is that? Is that
that's a Bulgarian.
That's what I was
Bulgarian
thinking.
Lev.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening in Bulgaria. Hail Cameron. I want to suggest you to check out the Bulgarian movie. Of course, he says right here, Bulgarian movie Time of Violence from 1988. After the book of Anton Donchev, am I saying that right? Donchev? A tale of Janissary returning to Birth Village as an Ottoman soldier, and then he has a follow-up to that one. Both are amazing and have different but equally great endings. Also, the movie The Goat Horn from 1972, that is another commentary of those times in my country, even though it's more of a love drama. So thank you so much, Boyo Negative, for 2 in a row super chats. So he's recommending Time of Violence from 1988 and the Bulgarian film The Goat Horn from 1972. So
I've just found both of them on Google. They're apparently available. You can see them all online. That's very interesting to me. As you guys know, I have a project I'm in works with right now on the Ottoman Empire, and I was in Bulgaria just 6 weeks ago, and I fell in love with that country. It's absolutely stunning. So thank you for sharing those. I want to check those films out because I know the Ottoman the history is very real in Bulgaria today. I went to Ottoman mosques that are in use today. There's a large Muslim minority from the Ottoman times still part of Bulgaria, and that's a very big part of the national consciousness, which is something I want to put into my show, which is dealing with Eastern Europe, particularly the area of Bulgaria, and how it related to the Ottomans. So thank you for telling me that. I'm going to look into both of those. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for the recommendations. And then we had Dark King come in with $2. Said, will any of this block Iger's presidential hopes? I think a lot of those hopes are out the window already.
Yeah,
they were gone as everything started to go down in China.
Come on, man.
He's going to be seen now as completely aligned with China, and he would have a lot of people lining up against him. He exposed the Disney Corporation to a lot of problems with the heavy investment in China. So there you are.
I think his chances go ahead.
I'm sorry, Tom, interrupt.
I was just going to say his chances, I think, went out the window when he decided to reinsert himself back at Disney, and then he decided to go with who instead. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
But I want to thank Culture for saying that, because I've actually said this here on Midnight Edge before, that the China strategy has intentionally changed in Disney, which is a signal for the rest of Hollywood. We saw that with Black Widow. We saw that with Shang-Chi. Well, they're saying Shang-Chi, they didn't want it anyway. But we saw that Disney's now realizing releasing in China isn't going to be a financially viable thing. And that's something I've said for several years was coming, because I've worked in China, I've worked in Beijing, and I know that their whole goal was to simply take advantage of Hollywood, and Hollywood hadn't figured that out. And now they're realizing there will be no economic profitability there, number one, for them. And that's why Chapek has been moving away from China. And that's why we have, that gentleman, Mr. Sena, who made this weeping, crying, foolish apology to China for over Fast and Furious, was a complete buffoon, because he hadn't seen that the whole system was shifting away from China. So there's no need for it. So he just made a jackass of himself for no reason. So that's a pivotal thing that's happening. And also, I think generally China in American political discourse is becoming a very negative thing. Having worked there and having loved the Chinese people and despised the Chinese Communist Party, I think it is a good thing that Americans are waking up to what the Chinese Communist Party is, and what a threat it is to the entire planet and to the human race. And so I think that awakening is also going to change Hollywood, and also going to, as Culture suggested, is going to damage. I think Iger will never be president. I think he knows that. I think it's because the club is cracking. And the presidency and the entire political structure of the United States is based on the feudal club, right? Or the aristocratic club, and that is breaking. It's certainly having a final hurrah that's pretty scary right now, but it is breaking. And I think the world we're going to evolve into is a very different kind of republic, where the social class structures are going to be a little bit different. I think that's coming after this sort of difficult period we have to go through right now to get to it.
Indeed. Anybody else anything to say about that, or... Didn't think so. Mike the Mexican Iron Man says, Tom, hashtag feel sorry for the number guys. Well, I feel sorry for guys like you, Mike, but I don't necessarily feel sorry for Bob, but I feel bad, let's say, that he hasn't even had a shot to be able to show us what he can do. And I'm wondering if he'll be treated like, I keep forgetting the individual's name.
Which Bob? Iger or Chapek? You keep saying Bob. Which Bob? Chapek. Sorry. I know. When I say Bob, it's usually Chapek, because I used to refer to Robert. Yeah,
Iger.
You called Iger Bob. I
always called him Robert Iger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, whenever you say Bob, you refer to Chapek, unless you refer to Iger.
Well, no. Usually, when I used to talk about Iger, you used to call him Robert anyway all the time. So, to me, it's a Robert.
You feel
Iger.
Bad for Chapek. You feel bad.
I don't really feel bad for Chapek, but I wish I wish he got a chance to at least show us what he's got in mind, or what he's willing and able to do, because I hope that it's not the case. But there was an individual, I keep forgetting his name. He ran the Disney company for about a year or two before Eisner took over, and I have a feeling that's what's going to happen to him.
Are you talking about Mike Ovitz?
No, was it Ovitz?
Ovitz briefly ran it and then was out.
It might have been him, but it was somebody else. And because they had a lot of the same kind of mentality that Chapek did at that time. And because I was researching it for a possible video in the future, because it seems like there's a lot of parallels here to that era between when Disney died, and the company was about to go under, and then you had this other guy come in, and there was this other person who was going to turn around and try and sell a bunch of shit off. Was it Miller was his last name?
Miller. Yeah, and he was son-in-law Miller.
That's because there was a relation there. And then there was this other guy who was big up in the shareholders, and he was trying to piece out the company and sell off
Roy O. Disney led the revolt to get Eisner in place.
And then they got Eisner in instead. Yeah, so it was this whole big motherfucking power play thing that it's kind of similar to what we're seeing now, I feel like.
Well, again, I mean, you had Wells there. You had very significant people. Yeah, Ron Miller's Darth Tiki says that's right.
Yeah,
I believe that's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, no, you guys are right. Card Walker was incredibly important during the Eisner era. And when we lost Card Walker, that's when Eisner seemed to lose his way. And that's when a lot of the executives like Katzenberger and stuff like that left the company. That Disney history is amazing stuff, guys. It really is.
Well, that's the thing is Eisner had a really good group of guys underneath him, including Katzenberg and a few others that he did. He kind of drove away, unfortunately. And they weren't always right. They weren't perfect, but these were the guys who reinvigorated Disney. Like they were the guys that were behind The Little Mermaid and all that kind of stuff, and convinced them that they needed to do things like Splash and do some adult fare instead of just kids movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the whole China thing a minute ago, Cameron, and one of the things I'd point out is, Hollywood's figuring that they can't rely on that anymore. Although what makes it even worse for Disney is that you've got other studios out there. So you've got Bond that's going to release in China on October 29th, and Dune is going to release in China, according to last reports by Variety, same day, October 22nd, as here. So you're still getting these Chinese releases.
Yeah.
The failure at this part on Disney's side of things is, and I still can't believe this, and it still boggles my mind that Kevin Feige made such a blunder when it came to casting, number one, Shang-Chi, and number two, selecting Chloe Zhao. Is wonderful as she may be, and this is nothing against Simu Liu, nothing against Ms. Zhao either. It's just that they are persona non gratas for China. I mean,
Yep.
and again, especially with Shang-Chi, which was a movie that was built for China. You cast a guy whose parents defected from the CCP and from China and fled to Canada, whose son, before he was cast as Shang-Chi, goes on Canadian television in 2017 and talks about what a third world country China is and all this. And somehow this slipped through and they cast these people. And they want to talk about, they didn't want it because of the Fu Manchu issue and all this. I think that was just BS. You cast Tony Leung in a movie like that, who's a huge Chinese star, one of my favorite foreign actors for sure. I've loved all of his stuff. I own many of his movies. But I think that at the end of the day, you put a guy like Simu Liu in there, China has basically burned him to their populace. I mean, with putting that video out in China of him calling the country third world and poor.
Which he's not inaccurate about. I mean, look, I have issues with his other comments that he's made about people's personal predilections towards, cuties, right? But he's correct about that. But you hit the issue, Valiant, which is Hollywood is just a bunch of dumb racists. Like, it's Chinese person, Chinese actor, Chinese woman. They don't have to do any research. It's Chinese. Put them in there.
And that's just it. And you're right. Simu was right on everything he said, but he was a poor choice if you're making a movie that you're trying to sell to China. How the hell Disney and more specifically Feige screwed that pooch is beyond me, because now technically you can't even use that character in any other Marvel movies if you want to have a chance of getting that movie into China. Or you're going to have to recut it to eliminate Shang-Chi from the film or something. You're going to have to make a version for China that doesn't include him.
It's Hollywood's old, just bring on the Chinaman, right? It's that whole sort of racist thinking that Bruce Lee said, I'm out of here. I'm out with you suckers, right? I mean,
you've got movies that are making it into China, and Venom, I think, will still get a date, although it's not slated yet. The word is that they'll still get one. It just, we don't know when it's going to be.
Yeah.
So, I think it's isolated to certain studios that make boneheaded decisions and just shoot themselves in the foot. And again, I'm not a fan of China's government either. Nobody is. I mean, outside of China. But again, if you're going to sell a movie to them, you need to learn to play the game better than Disney has. That was a huge mistake.
Well, that's the thing they never realize about China. And we've seen plenty of articles and other things to support this, in the sense that they don't want to see something that's pandering to them. They want to see American movies when they go to see an American movie. They want to go and see something with Angelina Jolie or Will Smith or Tom Cruise. Or
I actually want to add to that from a personal experience. So when I worked in Beijing, Tom, I had a very deep conversation with the writers. I was working with Chinese writers to develop a female spy series, similar to Nikita, which is a show that I'd worked on. And one of the deepest conversations we had was why they loved American movies, because they loved American movies because the CCP controls the narrative on the kinds of stories you can tell. Literally, every script that we wrote for this show had to be approved by some communist bureaucrat, right? And because it was about spies and stuff, we couldn't be government spying because you couldn't have the United States send spies into China because that doesn't happen in the People's Republic. We're too secure for that. So it had to be corporate spying, which is their big fear, like American companies stealing their technology, which is kind of the other way around. But whatever. So we did that, and the conversation we had was that the narratives in American films, particularly Hollywood films, gave people in China a sense of heroism and hope, which the CCP wanted to suppress in the narratives of its own culture, because they don't want heroes in China. Hero could stand up to the government, right? You don't want the stories of, you want stories that reflect the collectivist communist agenda, where the hero is there helping the village, and you don't want someone standing up like a Luke Skywalker to the emperor, right? That's something that is a threat to the Chinese Communist Party's social control. And so that's why they loved American movies. It was a chance to experience good old-fashioned archetypal heroism that they couldn't get from their own culture. So even though they have very successful local industry, right? Very successful industry, they still had this longing because they knew they were in a cage, in an ideological cage, and they had a longing for something else. And that's the origin of that. And so that's why Hollywood doesn't understand pandering to people that don't want to be pandered to, or looking for the Hollywood escape.
All right. So moving on, though, because we got a lot of super chats to get through, and we don't want you guys to be waiting too much longer. Lord Trinan, who's been a member for 7 months at the Viking level, thank you so much for being here and a member, said in his member message. Now, this is one of the messages that don't show up for us, guys. So we apologize for missing these in the past, and we're going to do our best to keep up with them now in the future, especially until they give us some kind of repository, like Andre said. But he said, don't trust the numbers. They're not creative. Trust the creative people, but the creative people aren't creative either. I'll take the numbers, guys. Thank you. He at least might listen.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yes.
Well, and this is the point that I think I've been talking circles around the last few days, and I think I was very clear about this. Disney is no longer a creative company. They haven't been in a while. All of the creatives are out the door, and it doesn't matter if it's physical entertainment from Imagineering and all the talent that they just let escape elsewhere, to the people that write and produce these films. The creativity is gone. They will rehash everything all over and over again and tell it slightly differently so that they can fit in some narrative, whatever they want to talk about, whatever that talking point is for the time, which means that you delude the story that was originally told, number one, and number two, you're not getting the member berries that you're trying to get. And that's all Disney relies on now, is this constant circulation of member berries that nobody's interested in anymore, because you've diluted it and diluted it and diluted it.
Right. As we said, they've turned all their classic films into nothing but content.
Yeah.
And we have a super chat here from Malaysia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm so sorry if I say this wrong, but Kazuya Shu, if I'm saying that correctly, I apologize if I'm not.
Yeah.
Sends in 15. I think it's Rignant. How do you say that?
Ringgits, I believe.
Ringgits. Thank you so much for that. It says, as a Chinese outside of China, none of us like China.
Yeah.
Ask Taiwan and Hong Kong. Tom is right on the pandering part. We don't like pandering. Nobody does. Nobody really does. But I mean,
and everyone senses it. Everyone knows when they're disingenuously trying to kiss their ass.
Yeah.
But no, it's the equivalent of like, oh, I want to go get Chinese food and going to an American restaurant. It's just dumb. It's dumb. It's the reversal, but still, it's the same point. Like, I get you. It's like, you want to see a Chinese movie. There's plenty of those. You go to see an American movie, you want to see an American movie. Just like if I want to go see a Chinese movie or a what have you, other kind of movie, that's the whole point, right? Like, why are we trying to pander to other countries? It makes no sense. Go ahead, Culture. You had something to say.
No, not at all. The numbers bear it out, by the way. I mean, right now, if you want to increase your social credit score, you go see the political film about the battle, in China going back a long ways, right? For Vietnam, it was a Vietnam battle, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was China basically beating the U.S. Yes.
Yeah, and that's and so now that's what's inspiring people in China. Well, maybe not. Maybe they want their social credit score to be higher. But I mean, that thing earned $500 million in its the last week or last weekend, according to sources. So there's a serious disconnect, and I think Disney was smart to pull out some of their feelers, and I think the long-term ramifications in China for Disney is that they worked with the wrong side of the equation, and put that park in Shanghai. Right. And I'm afraid Universal Comcast is doing the same thing. They put down a lot of anchors, spent about $6 to $8 billion, depending upon who you believe, to put a theme park in Beijing.
Which will be held hostage by the CCP. That's property that they're going to control.
Yeah, they're not even going to really own it.
No. Well, you only own at best 50%. Yeah, at best. And that's what I always tell people. I'm like, you get 25% of the box office, and you get 50% of the ownership of whatever you put in China, which
that's what they're learning is they're not getting the fucking money back either.
Yeah, you're a partner with a communist government. And if you look at the
50% on paper only.
2014, there was an issue with box office collections not making it to Hollywood studios. It happened again in 2018, where it repeats itself every 4 years. Where
a big thing with Paramount is the reason why they're in the place they are right now is because of all their dealings with China.
Yeah,
they were one of the first ones to break away from them, and they're still in this place where they're at right now. So this is not going to be good for a lot of these studios, I think, when it happens.
Yeah,
because these are not people you want to get in bed with.
No, but that was the story that they've been telling a long time, and it's incredibly frustrating because again,
they're going, where's our money? And China's just like, what money?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. You have to separate China, the government, from China, the people. The China people,
absolutely,
as Cameron would say, amazing, right? And very much want to be somewhat entrepreneurial, et cetera, and the demonstration of such is or was Hong Kong and is Taiwan and other territories that China likes to try to lay claim to. So you're in this really weird place, right? Very strange. And geopolitically, corporations putting themselves in harm's way, that was a bad plan. And you have a lot of money. We were just talking about the institutional level hedge funds and management firms and fund firms and all that. We were talking about all those earlier in the conversation, and they are deeply invested in bonds that support companies that are on the verge of financial collapse. We're talking BlackRock is one of the largest money managers there is, trillions of dollars, multiple trillions of dollars, right? And they are deeply invested in the real estate endeavors in China and other places, and it is cratering. We lost we're going to lose another mid-level developer in China here very soon, and we're watching the Evergrande is teetering, and the government's like they're going, you know what? We don't feel like bailing this out, which is going to crush some of the financials for these.
It may just be that they can't bail it out. They don't have the economic ability to bail it out, and because the collapse of Evergrande is going to be a massive sword into the heart of the CCP.
Oh yeah.
Well, they just don't have the ability to stop that now. So that's why I think we're actually entering a chaotic period, but it will be a better world when it's over.
Yeah. Megs says, and this is ironic that you mentioned this, Megs. I'm sure Andre's going to have a thing or two to say about this. Midnight's Edge, have you heard of the Star Wars animation of the OT? Andre.
Yeah, indeed we have. I would submit that many of those you're hearing it from now heard it from us because we put the video up last Friday.
Yeah, and nobody watched it. So yeah, we knew about
you
this.
You should have had me on, but I was
maybe
talking about
it was just a regular video though.
No, it's a regular video, like a 10-minute scripted video that people have been requested and no one is watching when we put it out.
Everyone go watch that video after this stream. Right?
Yeah, because that was out there a while ago, and you guys did a great job with your video, and now you have Clownfish and other sources like Bounding Into Comics covering it, and I'm like, you guys were ahead of the curve. It's like crazy.
We tend to be, but that one just missed everybody's radar, I guess. I don't know. Of course, that was in the middle of when YouTube was doing some of their funny shit too. So I don't want to blame it completely on people just missing.
I didn't see it come up on my feed, so
yeah.
it may just have been one of those.
So check out our last scripted video, guys. That is about the OT being reanimated in a way. And then there was another one here I wanted to grab before we got back to Super Chats, and now I lost it. Darn it.
You know what? That's really funny. I saw a chat in there from somebody here. I mentioned in the private chat that if you want to see what the country of China really represents and not necessarily what they try to put forward, ADV China is probably a good channel to look at on YouTube. Just FYI, it's two guys that do motorcycle treks. So it's very, very much worth your time. So.
And I agree with Bob A here. Neil Diamond should sing the next Bond theme. Long overdue.
Oh, that would be so great.
No time to cry.
Except his voice is almost.
I'm gonna do my pitch for my lady. I think Taylor Swift should do the next Bond thing. I think she'll bring it.
I'll tell you this, Cameron. It's kind of bullshit that Billie Eilish got it before her.
I agree.
Because I predicted that. I fucking predicted it too. Like
she was wrong.
Almost 3 years ago.
She would have brought her A game to a Bond song.
When they announced this new movie, I'm like, you watch, they're gonna get somebody like Billie Eilish to do the song because we were debating on who was gonna do the music.
Dude, please no.
And I said that. I said it's gonna be Billie Eilish. You watch, and everybody's gonna bitch because
does the song suck?
It does.
Does the song suck?
It's memorable.
It sucks completely. Yes, it's so boring. It's such a boring intro sequence with that song.
Do you even understand her? I don't understand her lyric. When she sings, I don't understand her.
Because I don't remember a word.
Yeah, and she's trying to be politically active now. She's gone full activist, and look, you turn off so many people, but it is what it is.
Yeah, the Illuminati just gave her a script.
Well, and I said the thing is look, she's a talented singer, but she has a long way to go. And that's the other thing is I feel like she should not be singing a Bond song. She doesn't have enough experience yet.
And no power. She's got no power behind her voice. VR,
she does that whisper singing shit.
If VR weren't dealing with stuff that he's dealing with right now in the background, he would tell you that she doesn't have the voice and maturity to do it. She's not some of these incredibly talented singers we've had do these songs. It's not, Adele who's had a decade of experience. And VR, you can speak on this freely because this is your wheelhouse.
Well, I know we got super chats to get back to, but what I was going to say, every time, because I've got a 16-year-old daughter, of course, Billie Eilish, a couple of years ago, she was kind of into her, and then she got away from her because she's like, oh, she's too damn crazy. But, the thing is with Billie Eilish, she's trying to be the modern version of Fiona Apple with that vocal styling. I mean, that she's looking for that dry, gritty kind of
70s rock fan-esque. Is she a talented singer? Yeah, she is, but she hasn't found her true voice yet, I don't think. Would you agree with that, Valiant?
I haven't really listened enough to her.
She does a lot of the whisper singing. She doesn't really sing from her diaphragm that much. She's still I can't believe she's gonna blow her voice out if she doesn't get any voice coaching.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, Adele, you brought her up, kind of was the same thing. I mean, I think Adele, she was out for a year or two because she actually, surprise, surprise, my wife called it after her first album. She's going to have surgery on her vocal cords to remove nodules before she's probably 30, and sure enough, so
it's kind of what probably happened to me.
Mrs. Renegade, the voice teacher,
Yeah, it's one of those things. I just don't think I'm not trying to put her down as a singer because I mean, I've listened to enough of her songs to say, yeah, she can sing, but I just don't think she has found her true singing voice yet. Then Meg sent us a microphone. Thank you so much for that, Megs. Valiant Renegade. I don't know who this guy is, but he says, I personally can't wait to see what and how much changes at Disney over the next 2 years. Once more of Chapek's plans and projects materialize, particularly on the studio and film distribution side. Did you want to comment on this guy's super chat here, Valiant?
I think y'all pretty much ran through it already. I mean,
I just want to reiterate my position when it comes to this. It'll be good for the studio side of things. It is going to be destructive on the theme park side of things because if everything is now being homogenized, the Disney difference when it comes to the four keys of good show have been completely eliminated under Chapek's watch, and they added a fifth bologna sausage key. So there you are. Wow.
We'll see what happens. Give it a couple of years. We'll see how it pans out.
I just happen to be muted here.
No, seriously, if you think I'm kidding, go look at what in the Disney the Premier Park now, which is in Disney, Florida. Go look at the Mouse Gear store. In fact, Lorena Creole, one of the channel friends here, she did a video showing just how homogenized it was. It looks like the inside of a modern Gap or a Target or something else.
It doesn't have any flavor or sense of uniqueness. Yeah,
none, no theming. It's garbage, hot garbage.
All right. And then we have let's see here. We had Stephanie Janicek, or Janicek, I'm sorry. Says 3 years ago, last week, it was announced that Kennedy was renewed. We have heard nothing. We get the 20th, she's out 10/20, so it's hard deck.
That's actually a truth with modifications. It was never announced.
Yeah,
Kennedy's camp had to announce it themselves because there was never a Disney announcement. So it was I think it was Entertainment Hollywood that
it was Deadline.
That learned, it wasn't Deadline. I think it was Hollywood Reporter. Well, it was either the Hollywood Reporter or Deadline Hollywood, one of the
Variety.
two. Yeah, I think it was either Deadline.
It was a press release from her. And
it wasn't a press release. It was rumor. They had learned exclusively learned through backdoor towns that he had been renewed. It was never announced. There never came a Disney announcement.
And remember, that's when she still had her PR woman there. And that's what she. So now her PR woman resigned a few weeks ago, right? And that's part of the everyone goes time's up, time to go, right? And so without her PR woman, there's no. I don't think they're going to hear anything. She's just going to limp on her way through whatever the final outcome is that she's negotiated with Chapek, right? But we've already started seeing her get these sort of fake awards. We're already, Stephanie Janicek sent me a link to a recent award she got last weekend. So that is the beginning of her long farewell, when she starts getting these like industry awards and lifetime achievement crap. That's the beginning.
Yeah, and you also predicted this, that all of her acolytes, those that got you blocked off of Twitter and stuff like that, there would be nothing for them. No one would want them. They wouldn't find anyone.
That's what I got kicked off, Andre. When I said that was one of my last tweets, and that's what pissed them off. When I tagged Lucasfilm in it, I said, "You flying monkeys," because they had been sending me attacks with fake accounts and whatever, and I knew it was coming from inside the company. Just it wasn't random trolls. I could tell from the context of what they were doing. This was an organized attack by idiots inside of Lucasfilm, and I called them out. And the next day, I was pulled from Twitter because somebody inside Lucasfilm just made a phone call to their friend inside of Twitter and said, "This guy's a problem for us," right? And boom, I was gone.
And Tom, run through a couple of more super chats before we get into Hellraiser.
Yeah,
I was just grabbing a few and put them in the chat here. But yes, so thank you, Stephanie, for that. Then that Valiant Renegade person is back with another $4.99. He says, institutional investors, major stockholders, holders, choose the CEO. In other words, the money business people, Vanguard, BlackRock, American funds.
Yeah, we got the Valiant ones already.
Okay, so then Kit Kat,
we rushed through that guy. Like, was no
reason to dwell on that. Kit Kat, who's been a member for 7 months at the Crom level. Crom smiles upon you on this day.
Crom has more Norse mythology coming. My voice is almost back again.
You might just have to have me read it as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here's your mythology for the day, okay? Just listen to it and it's good. Yeah. All right. Kit Kat says, celebrating the beautiful new orange badge just in time for Halloween. Well, that's great. You're dressed for the occasion, Kit Kat. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a member. Mexican Iron Man fires in another $5 and says, Disney board is a bunch of woke Iger morons. I was going to call them Iger mongers. That sounds better too.
Yeah.
If
we
Disney,
got that one too.
We got that one. Okay.
Yeah.
We got we didn't get Diego's though for 7 months.
No, that we didn't.
Has been a Viking, and this is his member chat. Thank you for that. I can add, being a corporate brat is the fact the U.S. corporate culture is rather vicious by nature. Grew up seeing my father doing that and eating his opponents alive here in Peru.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Then Hyper Guyver sent in $5. Did you have something to say to that?
No. I agree. That's American culture, business culture.
All right, and then I actually have somebody at the door if somebody wants to keep going. Hyperguyver, we got that one with about the Army of Darkness. And then we had Corsair Raven, who said, "Sigh, I'm glad my dad is not around to see his hero James Bond crying, begging. He'd lose his shit."
Yeah. My dad was a
Yeah.
real stoic guy. He was a very masculine man, right? And I think he'd just get up and walk out of the theater.
Yeah. And Tom, I can continue from there
Yeah,
for
I'll
a
be
couple
right
more
back.
while you go and get the door. Then Kit Kat said for £10. It's a common practice for Japanese films to have violence edited out for an American audience which is repulsed by it. They seem to think the American audience will be more repulsed by Bond begging. But also on that note, we have reason to believe that scene is still in the American version, or certainly in the British version, as it were, because Yasser Ansari, who first said, "I don't remember that scene," he later posted a follow-up super chat saying, "Thanks for clarifying. That scene was actually in the film." Now, he saw it in the UK. "I somehow forgot it, or assumed he would be apologizing to the lady character. Sorry, guys." But yeah, Kamran, be on the lookout. Now you know what to look
No,
out
that's
for.
gonna be. I'm
for
gonna
that
give it.
scene.
I mean, look, I'm
Yeah.
dreading this. I'm dreading because I know the final outcome. I'm dreading that. I could swallow anything else. There were times in Timothy Dalton's run where it was at the top of sort of the AIDS era in America, and so there was a lot of talk about Bond, using protection during sex and whatever and stuff like that. It was actually in the movies, I think. And so, we understand that Bond can often reflect the cultural moment, right? But he's still got to be Bond, and he's still got to survive.
Oh yeah,
So, to me, that's what I'm dreading. So,
exactly. And then Corsair Raven said for $5, "LOL, cry pussy," rolling on the floor laughing. Yeah, we had some great titles in there, didn't we?
we've got one that's appeared a few times in the chat, which is just quote, misquoting Goldfinger saying, "I want you to cry, Mr. Bond."
Yeah.
That classic line. You want me to talk? No, I want you to die. So no, I want you to cry.
Yeah. And then Purple Brain says for €1.99, 5 weeks difference. Use EU response to recut Dune for the US. I don't think so. The times when a movie is recut for the US is done for completely different reasons. Then it's done to hit a certain rating. A star example, for instance, is Taken. Which is actually made by a French production company, and then it was later bought by Weinstein, who chopped it to bits for the American release to get the PG-13 rating. So what you know as the extended harder cut, that is in reality the original version released everywhere else, whereas the standard US cut is the cut down for American audiences cut. But I don't think that's going to happen with Dune. It would have to be something really, really amazingly negative that they got the reception on for that to happen, and there hasn't been anything like that.
Dune is going to be a huge hit in America. I think it's going to be bigger than Bond.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. You liked it, so yeah.
Yeah, and the Geiger says for $2 Canadian, Bond will just be reconstructed with a new actor. Reconstructed or deconstructed, as it were.
You have to deal with the timeline, and maybe the way you deal with it is that the uniqueness of the Daniel Craig era is that it has a beginning and an end. I mean, you see Bond getting his 00 number at the beginning, and then you see him no longer having it, and then you see him exiting the scene. So you can think of it as a specific carved out version of Bond with a beginning, middle, and end. That it will. But I think we just go back to Bond as standalone movies with multiple actors. I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And then Raging Golden Eagle says on that note for $5, the best thing they could do with Star Wars and Indiana Jones is put them on hiatus for a few decades. Bring him back when the bad taste is gone. And before that, MJ1 Media said either 60s or retro 60s like in Tomorrow Never Dies for Bond. Then Mexican Iron Man says, please like, share, and subscribe, and please sub to Cultured Casino and subscribe to Kamran Pasha's Patreon YouTube channel today. And Kamran's Patreon, of course, you'll find in the description. And before long, there will be links to both Cultured and to Valiant here as well.
Great channel. Michael, subscribe,
Yeah, and Michael Miller wonders, and I think after this, then we'll soon get into Hellraiser. What's your take on the rumored Sony time cap of 100 minutes? That's the first time I hear of it. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of this. Culture, have you heard this?
No, but I've seen studios dictate that films need to work within this period. There was a time when they were trying to turn screens super fast, that they were trying to limit exhibition time. It wouldn't surprise me, but I had not heard of this. So there you are.
I haven't heard of anything officially handing down, but I mean, I understand it. I think 100 minutes is maybe a little short.
That's a bit draconian.
That's because 120 is about right for a lot of films.
Yeah.
So, that seems extreme to me, but yeah. And then Scissors with the Runs said, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to cry." As we said already. Dr. Long Dongler sent us a smiley super sticker, and the Mad Leprechaun says for $10. After listening to this conversation and watching what might be the final Tremors movie, Universal at least had the decency to make Burt Gummer go out like the Chad that he is. I haven't seen the last two, but it sounds like the last one, maybe the last one then. With that, Tom, are you back?
Just put my headset on. What's up?
Okay, perfect. No, because I was thinking that we have a few super chats left, but I'm thinking we take a little bit of a break from the super chats, and then we can get into Hellraiser for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Hellraiser.
Yeah, and the story with Hellraiser is that if you've been following our earlier live shows, you already knew that a new Hellraiser movie was in development. We said that we didn't know if it was just filming or if filming had already concluded, but we did know that they were much earlier along than anyone would think. They simply hadn't announced the fact to the world. We even learned that it had the movie was filming in Serbia of all places, which is cool. And then
Eastern Europe is a great place to film. When I was in Bulgaria, there's a lot of filming going on, Hollywood filming in Bulgaria. Eastern Europe is economically becoming more and more attractive for people.
Yeah, and I do hope that they're going to make the big Serbia character in the movie. But we'll
just
see
for some more context, Andre, because I wish I had you last night. Now, to be clear, there's two different Hellraiser things that are going on right now.
There are, and one of them probably will never happen.
And the other is a TV series.
And that's the one that may probably never happen.
Okay, but now this
one is definitely happening.
Now, my question is this, because last night, this is where my confusion is, because they talked to Clive Barker here.
Yes.
But now this isn't the one that he has anything to do with, is it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I was
This movie, here's the thing. Clive Barker now has gotten the rights to the Hellraiser franchise back.
Yeah.
All of the previous movies, ever since the first one, because he had to give up the rights to New World in exchange to get that first movie done in the first place. And ever since that, he has only been allowed the input that basically he's been allowed to have by the producers and the people actually making the movies, because he has had no stake in the franchise. He had to give up the whole freaking thing in return for working on it as a director and the writer as an external hired gun, but he gave the rights away. But now, 30 years later, he got them back again. So this is a movie where he has then signed off the rights to these filmmakers, and he actually does have some level of influence by way of being the executive producer. He isn't there on a day-to-day basis. He isn't dictating the story or anything, but he has the power to say yay or nay to various
Well, he
things.
regained his rights through the deal that we're seeing
Yes,
right now.
and
through
that
Disney,
is
and we talked
probably
about
what's
Victor
going to
Miller.
kill the TV series, because he put
Okay,
his
that was
weight
my
behind
question,
this.
because what was the deal with that? Was that had something to do with, because you were telling me that there was some other rights issue?
Yeah, the TV
So-
series looked actually really, really exciting, and I think that the TV series probably would have been the better, more exciting thing that more fans would have gotten behind. But Clive Barker getting the rights back may have put the kibosh on that TV series altogether, because it was made by one producer who claimed to have the TV rights, but the moment that Clive Barker got the movie rights, then that could be in dispute as well, and that might have
and we also have to remember
completely pulled the curtain on that.
Well, we also have to remember that this whole rights reissuing thing, where the creators can get the rights back, it only is in the U.S. anyhow. So that also needs to be stated. So that doesn't necessarily mean the show might not happen, but we just might not see it in the U.S. But I was curious where the rights breakdown was, because they never really mentioned Pinhead by name. They only call this character the Hell Priest in this
And the reason
article.
for that
And that's
is
why I
that,
wanted to ask
is that
about,
Pinhead was never an official
That I know.
name for the character.
But I gotta imagine Dimension
The
did
Hell
copyright
Priest-
that after a while.
The Hell Priest is Clive Barker's preferred name for the character. The name didn't exist at the time when he wrote the original novella, but he did canonize it in the Scarlet Gospels, which was the movie where he killed the Pinhead character off in books. There he also canonized the name the Hell Priest. So that is the official name for the character, colloquially known as Pinhead, is the Hell Priest.
Well, and I was curious about that last night, because again, I wish you were there, because that's where I was asking myself is that something that was because of this rights split, or now is it because is it because more so that when they created that character name, that was way into the process, and I'm sure Dimension or Miramax or whoever or somebody at some point copyrighted Pinhead. So I mean, I'm sure somebody owns that, but it's
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that anyone owns that name. The character has never been referred to as. That's just been something that
I don't know. Let me go grab one of my Pinhead toys, and we'll find out.
Yeah.
Look,
I don't think that anyone can claim ownership over that or something like that, because here's the thing: the character originated in the movie Hellraiser, and the character was then only known as Lead Cenobite. If there is anything, it's in Hellraiser 3. That there may be something, because you see all of the images that or toys that have come out from McFarlane Toys and what have you not. It's not from the first movie, it's not from the second, it's not for the fourth, it's for the third movie. It's always been the look for that has been used in toys. That may also be where they can use the name Pinhead, because I believe he was credited as Pinhead in the third movie. In the second movie, he was Pinhead Cenobite. In the first, he was the Lead Cenobite.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But there may be some issues
because
there.
See here on the NECA, it is actually clearly called Pinhead.
Yeah, and that's the Hellraiser 3 imagery.
Wow.
But this is listed as Hellraiser, the first movie.
But there's I don't think that there is some kind of right split where someone can take the Pinhead character and separate that from Hellraiser. I do not believe so. Then it's a matter of some kind of merchandising rights or something.
That's what I mean. Right. Because maybe they can't necessarily do that specific version, is my point. Is there might be some rights hold up through Dimension or Miramax or something, is my point.
That is not within that's not outside the realm of possibility.
Because prior to this is the first time I've seen something that was the first Hellraiser movie. Prior to this, it was always something from Hellraiser 3. Show me.
I
can't find my pop. Okay, this just says regular Hellraiser. It doesn't say Hellraiser 3. But now the Funko Pops and all the figures they had before would always say Hellraiser 3. And that was because of the rights issue, because Miramax didn't own the first two, but they owned everything after that. And they bought the character and the franchise from whoever it was that owned it
The
originally.
Hellraiser rights have been an absolute mess and a nightmare.
Exactly
The only
my
thing
point.
that's worse are the He-Man rights.
And
So it
that's
very
why
well
they had to do
could
that for so
be
long. Yeah.
something to the.
It's kind of
to
like
that end.
how Child's Play for the longest time, no matter what they did, Universal could not refer to anything from the first Child's Play. That was always why it was Child's Play 2 and beyond stuff. They could never do anything. So like all the toys and stuff would always make sure it would say Child's Play 2 on it and not just Child's Play.
I will say this: the greatest tagline in history is in the Child's Play movie, where where you have the female doll, and the tagline is Chucky gets lucky. Which I think
That's Bride of Chucky. Yep.
I think it's that's absolute genius. Chucky gets lucky. I mean,
Yes,
it doesn't
it
get better
was.
than that.
Well, Bride of
Now-
Chucky was like that was an anomaly and a half. But we'll get beyond that for a moment. But like,
But yeah, it's I can't rule out that there is something that prevents them from using the
That's what I'm thinking, the actual
classic
name
iteration
Pinhead.
of Pinhead and the name Pinhead. That could be, but even if they could, I don't know that they would want to, because this has always been marketed as not so much a remake of the first movie, although that's
But
like
as,
what it will be billed as, but creatively it's more of an adaptation of the original, the Hellbound.
well, let's put a pin in that for a moment, pun intended, because culture has to leave us now.
Yeah, and I just want to say very quickly on this. I'm going to say something positive, and people will be surprised. Jamie Clayton is pretty good actor. I mean, pretty good, and I believe that probably could do this character very well and be the Hell Priest. And it's always been a succession, as Tom and I talked about before, and I think that it's quite. This could be pretty decent. I don't know that my expectations are very high, but I do believe that based on the first season of Sense8 and some other things that I've seen her in, it works. This works. But I do have to slide out. I want to say thank you for allowing me to join this esteemed panel. I love hanging out with Cameron. Don't get to see him often enough. And of course, VR is like, trying to, catch a frog by the toe. It's hard to get with him. But you guys are great. Thank you so very much for sharing some time with me, allowing me to come on.
Yeah,
and I want to say thank you for the incredible chat. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Yeah. I will see you soon. Peace out. Bye.
So yeah, what culture is referring to is last night on Mead, we covered this story, and I'm sure to a lot of people's surprise, I'm not against this casting, and I think Andre will understand where I'm coming from, because it's been many years.
Oh, you don't know where I'm coming from, and you talk as if I'm supposed to be against it.
I know. Again, you might. This is why I'm saying this, Andre. Let me finish. It's been many years since I've read the book, but I have read the book. And I do remember that there is a very ambiguous kind of description of who the head Cenobite is, and that's what she is referred to in the book, aside from, and basically it's an androgynous character. It is not meant to be male or female, and I'm just saying this. I'm okay with this, but they cannot let this actor play it as a woman. They have to definitely play up the fact that they can be fluid, because that is a big part of the original incarnation of this character. And so if they go with that, I don't have a problem with that. I'm curious if that's kind of how you feel about it.
Yeah, I want to hear what the Valiant has to say. Are you a fan of the franchise at all? And if so, do you have any thoughts on this recasting before we get into my point and even my live reading of the book? Because I have the book right here. It's even signed by both Clive Barker and Doug Bradley.
Wow, cool. Yeah, it's been a long time since I have watched a Hellraiser installment. Although I'm a big horror movie fan. October is my month. I probably watch something different almost every day if I have a chance to in that genre. Hellraiser is in that mix every year. Am I like a super fan like you, Andre? No, but I've always had a great appreciation for it and Clive Barker's work. And I did see this article yesterday. I think what Tom just said was kind of my initial gut instinct. Was when I saw this, I thought of Mary Martin famously playing Peter Pan on Broadway and stuff like that for years. Peter Pan, it's always cast. Peter Pan is always played by a female lead is played by an actress because of the vocal range required for the part. So I kind of look at Hellraiser, just like Tom said, this could be something fluid as long as they don't try to make Pinhead look like a girl or try to make it to be a girl where, like you said, it could be gender fluid or she's behind the makeup. And then visually, once that makeup is on her face, it looks, oh my God, it looks so good.
Well, and that's
all
I
really care about.
Is kind of like, that's the idea I kind of got from Pinhead. Or at least the character of the Hell Priest, was that it was a very gender fluid character. Like if you were a man, you were going to find him attractive. If you're a woman, you're going to find him attractive. That's the whole point. It's this psychosexual nature. Yeah.
Well, the comment that I'll make is I haven't watched the Hellraiser films. I should, because I love horror movies, right? I actually haven't watched these, and I should watch them. And this is inspiring me to go back and do that and actually go read the books. But I'm going to make a general comment about the issue of, because the thing is, Hollywood is waiting. Hollywood is waiting for their perceived anti-trans backlash when they're putting this out there, right? They're waiting for that so they can use that for PR purposes. And we're actually not seeing that happen, exactly because people, fans of the character, fans of the book, feel that a gender fluid, androgynous character fits the actual vision of the original character. And so in some ways, Hollywood's going to be disappointed because they're not going to get the backlash that they wanted for PR purposes. Because this is what I've experienced. I've worked on shows where trans characters were discussed to be included into the show. And, what I witnessed on one example on one show I worked on where the showrunner very passionately claimed to be for trans rights and all that. It was a big talking point in the room all the time, right? And then, I was in charge of dealing with casting on that particular show. And so I got the instructions, all right, we've got this upcoming character who's going to be a trans character. We want a trans actress for this. And we identified someone that would have been perfect for it. And I essentially was being put out to make an offer to them. And at the very last minute, the showrunner came up with some complicated excuse why we couldn't do it, and the whole thing was pulled. And I was embarrassed because I was talking to the casting people, and the actress had heard it and was very excited to play the role, and then to have that embarrassing call saying we're just going to axe the character. This is the example of the kind of fake wokeism of Hollywood, right? Where they spend all their time talking about gender and identity issues and whatever, but when it came down to actually putting their money where their mouth was, this loudmouth woke boss of mine, right, whose entire identity was saying all the right things, wouldn't do it, wouldn't pull the trigger, right? And it's interesting because here I am, a conservative traditional Muslim guy, right? And I'm the one being asked to be the interactor, and I have no problem with a trans person, fellow human being, right? And I'll treat them with dignity and respect. And I had the embarrassment of having to pull that offer, right? And it embarrassed me. And so because it took someone who was an actor, who had talent, hadn't really been seen yet, because to be very honest, trans actors have difficulty getting cast in Hollywood. And some of them are very, very talented. And that's they're having difficulty getting cast by the woke people who talk the talk. Right. And so that's the only thing I wanted to add to this, which I think that this is going to be interesting. I wish this Hellraiser success. I hope this actress plays it to the max, and that this actually becomes a breakthrough way that we can have a real conversation about this in a way not that Hollywood wants to control.
Well, I think this is going to come to the forefront here. And I can't wait to hear what Andre has to say, because I'm sure he has such sights to show us.
Yes, indeed.
But I just want to say up front that this actress is trans.
Yep.
So those who are curious in the chat who are wondering what we're talking about,
yep.
With the recent David Chappelle special, I think a lot of this is going to come to the forefront, and we're going to actually get into a lot of this on Monday with Chrissy Mayer, comedian Chrissy Mayer, who will be here Monday to specifically get into
Mayer. Oh my God.
Yeah, to talk about the Chappelle business. So
you got to hook me up with her. Oh my God, I love her. I will hook me up with her as in professionally.
I was going to say that may come off the wrong way.
I was going to leave that one alone. I was going to leave that one alone.
But no, yeah, so we'll definitely get more into the Chappelle stuff, but I think you're right, and I think a lot of that conversation is going to come to the front in the next couple of weeks here. So Andre, please tell us what you feel about this.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to comment on what Naked Fame is saying here to the Geiger. Clive Barker wrote The Hellbound Heart, the novella that the film is based on. Didn't know he was into the S&M stuff.
Well, that's what I meant, the psychosexual side of things.
Clive Barker isn't just into the S&M stuff. If it's if it deviates from the norm, and the more it deviates, the better, then Clive Barker is into it. That's his point.
I'll do
of
you
view.
one
And
better. Clive Barker didn't exist before 2016 because he's openly gay.
Exactly. And he's into just about anything. And also, as I said, what I have here in my hand is my signed copy of The Hellbound Heart. And I will now read a couple of segments straight from this book. What I'm reading right now is the scene where Frank has just summoned the Cenobites. So far, it's just a general description, not the Pinhead one. So he has just summoned them, and he has a hard time looking at them. Why, then, was he so distressed to set eyes upon them? Was it the scars that covered every inch of their bodies, the flesh cosmetically punctured and sliced and infibulated, then dusted down with ash? Was it the smell of vanilla they brought with them, the sweetness of which did little to disguise the stench beneath? Or was it that as the light grew and he scanned them more closely, he saw nothing of joy or even humanity in their maimed faces, only desperation and an appetite that made his bowels ache to be voided? What city is this? One of the four inquired. Frank had difficulty guessing the speaker's gender with any certainty. Its clothes, some of which were sewn to and through its skin, hid its private parts, and there was nothing in the dregs of its voice or in its willfully disfigured features that offered the least clue. When it spoke, the hooks that transfixed the flaps of its eyes and were wed by an intricate system of chains passed through flesh and bone alike, to similar hooks that through the lower lip were teased by the motion, exposing the glistening meat beneath. I asked you a question, it said. Frank made no reply. The name of this city was the last thing on his mind. And now then comes the Pinhead Cenobite. Do you understand? The figure beside the first speaker demanded. Its voice, unlike that of its companion, was light and breathy, the voice of an excited girl. Every inch of its head had been tattooed with an intricate grid, and at every intersection of horizontal and vertical axis, a jeweled pin driven through to the bone. Its tongue was similarly decorated. Do you even know who we are? It asked. And then I'm going to go forward a bit, because this was then description of two of them.
By the way, it called it unless you added that it's in the text, calling it the Pinhead Cenobite.
No, I added that. I added that. That was just like, this is who's talking now. Okay. So I added that. There's no name given to anyone. Yeah. No given to anyone. But I'm going to get into one final thing here, because there's a description of one more. I just have to flick through to find it here. Because there's a jump here.
But he actually explained it as a feminine, the voice of a young, excited girl.
Yeah, so this one had the voice of a girl, but it gets better. Here we get it. Where? Because now it's like a jump, and he has experienced some of what they can do, and it's not what he had anticipated. And then he is introduced to the final one, or we are being given a description. Where 2 moments before there had been an empty space, there was now a figure. It was the 4th Cenobite, the one that had never spoken nor shown its face. Not it he now saw, but she. The hood it had worn had been discarded, as had the ropes. The woman beneath was grey yet gleaming, her lips bloody, her legs parted so that the elaborate scarification of her pubis was displayed. So basically, one of the four was a female. Implication being they may all have been female, just really androgynous and sexless, and the one that came to be Pinhead in the movie even had the voice of a woman.
Well, because isn't that part of the whole thing of, like, I'm trying to remember from the book, like, isn't that part of their whole obsession is that with people is that they can't feel the pain and pleasure anymore, so they vicariously do it through people? Isn't that like
well, kind of, because basically they have seen all, they have done all,
exactly,
and they're like kind of like fed up with like sex and stuff like this, so they're just going to torture the hell out of you in ways that you can't freaking imagine. And this is kind of like the thing that Frank, he just wanted like the wildest experience of sex, and he realized that, shit, I'm not going to get any of that. I'm just going to get like suffering beyond imagination here. But anyway, the point I wanted to make here is that the way that I see it is that Pinhead, who we know as Pinhead, he's a product of the original movie. Whereas what they're doing here, whether it's for creative purposes or for rights reasons, which also could be a factor here, they're going back to the original source material. And in doing an adaptation of the Cenobites as described in the original novel, this actress, Jamie Clayton, who is a trans woman, is actually a closer fit with the original vision for the character than anyone else who has played it. Now, that is not taking anything away from Doug Bradley. Doug Bradley made the character iconic. But if you are going to do a new spin on it, someone like Jamie Clayton is not a bad way of doing it, because then you are completely reinventing it, and you are not belittling or taking anything away from Doug Bradley, because this is a completely different iteration of the character. If anything, he is the different iteration, because this is closer to the source material. If anyone was gender bent, it's actually the Doug Bradley Pinhead.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And sorry, I was just going to say, Cameron, and that's where, as long as they stick with that and doing this, I won't have a problem. But if they bring Jamie out there and they encourage her to play it more as a woman, then I'm going to have a problem. And that's where I hope other women stand up and say, now, wait a minute, if you were just going to simply do this in this way, why didn't you just let an actress do it? And why did you even cast a trans person outside of woke points, is my point, if that makes sense.
Well, and Jamie does has a deeper voice. It's not a traditional high-loaded voice, right? And so it's interesting because the character described in the novel actually has a more feminine voice. So it is, again, I think the actor is good for this. I'm sure there was internal calculations on woke issues and woke points. Definitely it's in the news articles. That's I'm sure people amongst the producers are hoping to get conversation about this rather than choosing someone for the right reasons, which are that it's close to the source material. This actress is good for this. So we'll see. I'm sure they'll try to milk that. They'll try to, the issue of gender identity on there. I just don't think it's going to affect this end result. If it's a good movie and she can play this character, it'll be the next stage. But it also the reflection of the original. You talk about, Andre, how the original playing of it had been actually a shift from the novel. I mean, we see that all the time in Hollywood. We most recently saw that with Captain Marvel, where we had the blonde Captain Marvel, which is a later iteration than the black woman Captain Marvel, and then that's the one that's put out as Captain Marvel, right? And yet the reality of the comics, the black woman was the earlier iteration of Captain Marvel, right? So that's Hollywood's fake wokeness all along. I mean, Hollywood, for all of its internal talk at the cocktail parties, is always just trying to make money. Right. And so they thought, having a woman play this character decades ago wouldn't have gone over. And they cast a really wonderful actor for it. But now I'm sure that it is woke calculations as to, that went into why they chose Jamie Clayton. But I just hope that Jamie's able to seize this character and make it their own. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are some astute observations. But yeah, no, all I can say is that I hope Of course, they're not going to do this. Like, my biggest reservation with this is that they're not going to go far enough in making it as sexual and perverse and stuff like that as it should be.
Well, and then they'll be nervous
Yeah.
about putting a trans actress with all kinds. This is playing a villain, right? And it's playing a villain that tortures people, and there's sexual perversion involved, and all that. They may be uncomfortable with that.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is if you're going to go for this, you got to go for this. You can't just half-ass this.
Exactly.
Like, because if they go out there and they just play it like she's just basically playing a female version of this character, that's where I'm going to be like, well, then why didn't you just give any actress the chance? What was the point of casting a trans actress if you weren't going to do anything with that? And that's what I'm saying. This is the time where you can make it count, right? Because there's going to be a lot of detractors who are like, oh, but Pinhead's a guy. And then you got guys like me and Andre and others who will go, wait. No, in the original version, there was this. And if they do it right, we could have one of the more faithful adaptations of the original novel. And now going from the article here, because we do get comments from Clive and we get comments from David Bruckner, who's behind it, and some other people. And it does sound like they're basically doing just that. They're giving us something that's a little more faithful to the original novel, but they are definitely mixing in some of the things that we love and remember from the film series. Visually, it seems like. I don't know about story-wise.
Yeah, actually, Naked Fame says, Rated X, the writers of a Serbian film are going to be like, whoa, that's effed up. This movie was actually filmed in Serbia, and you know what? I really wish that the producers behind the Serbian film would be involved with this, because then it would be no holds barred, and that would have been so right. That's never going to happen. That being said, I'm very excited about the director for this. I think, based on the director and this casting, that there's a really good chance that this, obviously it's never going to hold a candle to the original Hellraiser, but this could be a very interesting take on its own, because the director, he has made a movie that is really, really good in The Ritual. That's a fairly low budget British movie. It's about a bunch of British friends that are trying to recover from trauma, losing someone in there close to them. And instead of going on like a vacation trip to Dubai or something like that, they go on vacation to the woods of the Nordic, to just go on like a camping trip. And you know that whenever Hollywood takes someone to Norway or Sweden, they meet with like pagan devil worshippers and stuff like that. And something similar happens in The Ritual. But that movie is so frightfully well executed. And people have asked me if I've seen it. And I've said, yeah, I've seen it. And I love it. It's amazing. And that director taking on this material, I mean, the weak point in here is David S. Goyer, because what we know is that this movie is based on the original source material, yes, but it's based on David S. Goyer's interpretation of the original source material. Now that has me worried here
as well.
That has me worried.
Here's the asterisk to that, though. The shit that we don't like from Goyer is usually his superhero stuff and his other stuff. Like, when it comes to his horror stuff, it's not as bad. I will say that he has an opportunity to at least impress us. Right?
And also, he is as good as the people he's working with on any one project. And the director on this thing, based on The Ritual, is good.
Yeah. Okay. So, gentlemen, I need to head out shortly. Are there any super chats I need to address before I
let's we were mostly caught up here. Tom, can you check if there are any like member chats, and I'll check the super chats.
I don't think we've gotten any more member ones since then, other than the ones that I have shared in this thing here. I don't know how far you got while I was away. So
the last one that I had was let's see. Oh, it jumped on me here. So we have more. The last one that I had is from the Mad Leprechaun, who spoke about the Burt Gummer. That's the last one that I have here that we went through. And then I'm checking from there now after refreshing, seeing if there's any more ones for.
Okay, so you got a ways through them. Okay,
yeah.
So Nikki D would have been where we left off. It looks like.
Where we left
Trenchman or Nikki D would have been the next one here.
Actually, it would be since you already got a couple of them here. Nikki D would be the next one.
Yes.
Nikki D would be the next one.
So Nikki D
and that's
says,
a good one for Kamran.
Yeah, when you guys predict we'll see the significant signs of culture change away from the hyper-partisan politics and in film and television. When do we predict? Cameron, how long do you think it's going to take for a lot of this swing to start showing in our entertainment?
I have a specific year for you. I believe 2025. I think we have another 3 years to go of this cultural conflict / collapse that we're going through right now. It will be linked in some ways to the presidential cycle, but it is on a mystical level, and I've done mysticism on other channels, like Doomcock in particular. On a mystical level, there are some mystics that call 2025 the end of the Kali Yuga, which is the end of sort of the dark age of humanity and a beginning of a new age. But it also, it feels like just internally Hollywood, there's pressures that are going to take a few years to play out. People have said to me, Cameron, you keep saying Bob Chapek is in charge or is getting in charge. We have this woke thing still in Disney, and Disney's doing this thing, and Rocketeer's coming out with, and so yes, because there's all those things take several years to play out, and Chapek just can't come in and alter those tracks without massive financial losses. I think Valiant has said, and we've talked about the challenges that he would have if he tried to shut down Indiana Jones, which I still hope he does. But there are serious economic repercussions to that. So only in a dire circumstance would he do something. Personally, I think Indiana Jones is one he should do it on. But it's going to take a few years, even for someone like a Bob Chapek to really take control of Disney and put it on proper track. And that's going to be the linchpin for the rest of the system. And so I do think that's linked to presidential politics and all that. So 2025 as I think the beginning of a new era culturally in America and culturally in Hollywood, but it's going to be a really unpleasant 3 or 4 years to get there, right? And so you're going to see a lot of disappointment in that time, both culturally and in entertainment. But what's happening is a new era is beginning, bubbling up as people's resentment towards the club, towards the aristocratic, feudal aristocrats that control our media and our culture as they start having their downfall of their Humpty Dumpty moment is coming, but it's not going to be fun. So 2025 is what I predict.
Yeah. And then Black Wolf Inc. said for $5, I'm just here to listen to Killa Cam drop the bombs on the Holly wokeness. Live long and prosper, feeble ones. I laugh manically.
Well, I just dropped another bomb. I gave a specific year. I think 2025 is the year it changes, right? So we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. And then Mr. Tickle Trunk said for $5 Canadian, Kamran's expression was perfect and had the intended reaction. You're supposed to be modified. Also, well read, Andre. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you for that. And then let's see if there's anything else here for Kamran specifically. Just skimming through here real quickly. Lord Trinan says, horrible thought. Numbers, guys, relies on raw data. Can the club manipulate the data to control them that way? How can the guy get reliable data?
Well, this is the thing. The club does manipulate data and how you hear about it. We see it in the trades, right? And Valiant, who's an analyst of data, can see that the trades often misrepresent to the general public what the numbers are, or focus on bogus aspects of the numbers to create a PR impression, right? And we saw that around, specifically saw that around Black Widow and Shang-Chi, where Deadline in particular was pushing the Shang-Chi as the biggest thing since sliced bread, and then they manipulated the numbers and presented them so that when Black Widow had a 67% drop in the second week, if you go back and read the Deadline articles, this was the end of the world, right? And Bob Chapek had screwed it up with a 67% drop second week. And then you have a 67% drop on the second Friday for Shang-Chi. Deadline presented that exact figure as this brilliant success, right? So they manipulate figures for the general public. However, the economists and the analysts at Vanguard, at BlackRock, at all these places, at these large funds that are invested in Disney and in other parts of Hollywood, they independently look at the numbers and they know what's going on, right? So again, this is about the general populace being misled by a narrative versus the money guys going, okay, this is a lot of bullshit. We know exactly what's happening here.
Yeah, exactly. You can't. I mean, you can spin things in the media and say, this movie was a big success, and this was the biggest Labor Day box office opening weekend, and you can say all of that to market it, and that's why Disney put Shang-Chi where they did when they did, because There was nothing else coming out in September.
Mhm.
All you needed to break the Labor Day weekend was about 35 million US box.
Well, they're
which-
probably just lucky they had some sway or say over Venom, because if
Mhm.
Sony had dumped Venom on their ass,
Oh yeah.
they would have killed Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Like if they would have done it 2 weeks ago.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was, they could have put that out there mid-September, giving themselves a lot more distance and breathing room from Bond. But yeah, Shang-Chi would have been a totally different story, but it got free run. But to Cameron's point is, yeah, we can say all that in public, but you can't lie about the numbers. You can't lie to the boss like Chapek, and you certainly can't lie to the stockholders in terms of your financial reports, because then you're talking about federal prison time when it comes to a publicly traded company. Yeah.
And Disney is under SEC investigation for lying about some of its numbers on the parks, right? That was
Isn't it
reported about a
actually
year
two
ago.
separate investigations?
I don't know of a second one. I know that was
I think
reported.
yeah,
The
I could be
whistleblower
wrong.
inside of Disney had said what we were always saying, that they are misrepresenting the figures, as we saw, with regard to Lucasfilm, that they're doing it with the parks, and so there may be another one that was announced. We haven't heard anything more about it, and the SEC, like I worked at the SEC for one summer when I was a lawyer, and the SEC, like any other federal organization, has, let's just say it's like a federal bureaucracy. Like people that work inside of the FDA end up becoming on the board of Pfizer the moment they leave, which is what actually happened in the last few days, right? So so people inside the SEC remarkably sometimes end up at the places they were regulating the moment they leave that agency. So there is corruption and there is that kind of stuff. But there are still people, when I worked at the SEC, there are still people actually dedicated, and they see themselves as Elliot Ness. There's a lot of people, when I worked at the SEC, there was a lot of people that had that Elliot Ness belief that I'm bringing down the mob, right? I'm bringing down these rich assholes, right? And so there are those gunners inside the system that won't let go. And so it's dangerous to mess with the SEC. You're not going to win.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I think that's all the ones we have for you specifically, Cameron.
I
Unless
think
missed
so,
any,
yeah.
Andre.
I don't see anyone else that's
Yeah.
specifically for Kamran. And if
Well,
anyone disagrees with that, you have to let us know in
Yeah,
the chat
please let us know.
right now.
Because
Yeah,
in that, we're going to say, do check out Cameron's Patreon. He dumps all kinds of great knowledge and information and stories and all kinds of good stuff over there. Mexican Iron Man will attest to that.
Yeah.
And I think we're even subscribed to it, aren't we, Andre?
Yeah, no, I think Andre was one of my
Of course
first
we are.
subscribers.
Yeah.
I just got to get over there and watch. I just don't have time to even watch myself do anything.
But-
No,
but
of
I
course,
do-
Midnight Edge are subscribed to Kamran's Patreon.
That's what I thought. So you
And
guys should be as well.
No, whenever I come on this channel, my Patreon subscription is quantum leap within an hour thereof, and I thank this community for that, because on that channel I do really present a lot of stuff that I can't necessarily say publicly because it is a controlled channel, right? And so it is private. You have to subscribe to it, and I'm able to reveal a lot of things. The great pleasure I've had is I put up a few articles that have come true in the time that I put them up, right? And so it seems to be of value to people, and I'm putting up my third novel on there, and I'm giving creative writing advice, which has been very well received. So please join me on the Patreon if you can. And I'd love to come on the Chrissy Mayer live stream if there's a way for me to come on for a bit, because I think I have a lot of opinions on.
I'm sure that can be arranged.
Yeah, because I know people know Chappelle very well, and so I can give some insights about who he is and what's motivating his comedy. And so we'll see if that works out. But as always, it's wonderful to be here. Valiant, it's always great. I'd love to come back onto your channel, because if you aren't subscribing to Valiant Renegade's channel, I mean, this guy is giving some really, really in-depth insight to the numbers of what's really happening in Hollywood. Someone who is a financial analyst by trade, and so you really have to subscribe to get. He's got the voice. He's got the perfect voice for radio and the perfect voice for YouTube. So subscribe to him. And Andre and Tom, as always, thank you. Andre and Thomas, so thank you for having me on. I hope to be on again maybe Monday. We'll join for a bit with Chrissy Mayer. But I'll come in. Yeah, I'll come in definitely next week, assuming I'm healthy and I've got a little bit of a cold, and hopefully that'll overcome this weekend. And I'll send you my immediate reactions, Andre and Tom. I'll send them to you when I see Bond, hopefully tonight. And if there is an edited scene, it's worthy of a conversation as to why that's happening.
I don't think there is. I think it would be in there. I think that it's just within the context. People haven't picked up on the fact that there's literally a scene of Bond begging and crying for forgiveness.
So and maybe some people we block up psychologically, or maybe because it's a fake out, they don't remember it because it was a fake out.
Well, actually, that individual did write back. If I can find the.
Yeah, I know he did. We covered this.
He said he
that was in
did
the UK.
Yeah.
We have had people in the US
who
who said they haven't seen it either.
there are others. He wasn't
All
alone.
right, so
there were
we'll
others
see
there.
about that. Yeah,
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Some others.
interesting.
All right,
So
everyone.
thanks for
God bless
that,
everyone.
Cameron, and take care of
Yeah,
yourself.
stick around
and we'll
here.
see you
Stick
soon.
around here. Everyone who hasn't liked it,
Yeah, we
this
got a
is
couple more
like the
super
reason-
chats to do.
We
yeah,
do.
one of our best broadcasts today. So please like it and continue to support this channel. So I'll see you all
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you for being here,
All right,
Cameron.
God bless.
And while we're plugging things, did you get a chance to watch? You can go ahead, Cameron, if you got to
Oh, okay.
go.
Well, then I'm going to say my farewell. Then you're going to plug something else. God bless everyone. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.
Cameron.
Did you get to check out Valiant and I's discussion on 4K yet, Andre, from the other day? That was
I did not. I've been busy, but I hope that people have been watching it. Although, and I look forward to seeing it this weekend, but I have not yet had the time. But I've seen in the comments that there are quite a few requests, and also we can talk about Escape from New York and the 4K version of that come next week.
Yes, we can. And yeah, it was a much bigger success than we had anticipated it. So we're glad you guys are enjoying it. And I think Valiant and I are hoping to do it every week. And even if Valiant can't make it, we'll definitely make sure that we have somebody there to help me out. But yeah, I think it was a lot of fun, and we could have talked for hours and hours and hours, but it was hopefully we'll have you on soon too, Andre, maybe next week. So that'd be
yeah,
cool.
we'll try for that. And with
4K
that,
for you. We are
Yeah.
very proud of that.
well, we have a few more super chats to run through here. Diego Flores, did we get this one? Said for 5 Peruvian souls, ADV China is no longer in China, if I am not mistaken. They had to leave. Party was after them. But now review their old footage. See there, if you go against the party, no good will come from it, even if they just perceive you to have done so. Trenchman says for $4.99. Personally, I'm done with Disney. Might as well stop before they ruin Lilo and Stitch some more with a live action film worse than the anime. Organic Vistas says Craig's Bond is a bore, just a spy movie. More hotties and gadgets coupled with copious usage of both needed. Craig's Elmo to Connery's Bond. Trenchman also sent us 2 super chats in a row saying there's a reason Kingsman is more beloved now, and Chin Masked Riders teaser was amazing. Chin Masked Riders? Okay. Yeah, I think I saw like a thumbnail for that pop up or something. I reckon it's like, yeah, well, okay, cool. Nothing I'm familiar with.
While we got a moment here, Kit Kat says we should have a Cameron emoji. I agree.
Yeah, we have to get that.
We'll
We
get
have to
that.
get that.
Well, you know what
Yeah.
we need to do? We have to have him have that little hat it's not little, it's big. The hat that Johnny Carson used to wear when he would do the predictions. So we'll get an emoji with him with that hat on. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get the
and a little
comment on
crystal
emoji
ball
too.
or something like that. You know, we should actually have Gary like draw it or something. Gary Kissel. Maybe he could draw it for us. And like, we
Yeah,
have it.
yeah,
That would be
cool.
awesome.
That would be very cool.
I'll see if he can do that for us.
Yeah, and then moving on with the super chats.
Karnak, yeah.
Organic Vistas said for $4.99. James Bond Hellraiser, sung by Rob Zombie. Shari Moon in credit sequence. Pinhead is Blofeld. The box is the MacGuffin nuclear unit. Well, that's not bad fan fiction right there, actually.
Yeah. Says we need a script doctor emoji too. That would actually be pretty easy. We just do his emoji.
Oh yeah, that's easy. Yeah, no, but yeah, we do
gotta
need
get
that
shirtless
as well.
one too. I'll get the shirtless one. That would be awesome.
Yeah, we absolutely do need that one. And then moving on here, we have Freakadelic who says I guess No Time to Die follow Nolan Batman arc. Casino Royale aped Batman Begins. Skyfall aped The Dark Batman. And now this one apes The Dark Batman Rises out of bed.
I kind of got on that subject last night with Robert Meyer Burnett when he hopped in.
Yeah,
I think you got a point there. Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really,
Yeah, you have to actually you have to skip all the others and just jump straight
Do I
into
really
the
want
great
to
era.
though? Because then I don't know if I'll be able to appreciate the actual Bond movies, but that's a lot to get through. I don't know if I could crash them all in this weekend or not.
No, they're quite long though.
Yeah, and KR Nut says they learned a lot on 4K for you. So thank you so much for being there. We're glad you guys are learning, and hopefully we can do some more of those soon. So every Wednesday, I think we're planning on doing it. So.
And then we got into the Hellraiser discussion with Mr. Tickletrunk saying Jamie Clayton is a good pick. The original character had an androgynous look and sound, supposed to be not female or female, with a heavy S&M inspiration. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
Of course, our trusty Wrench sent that in before you read the passage.
Yeah, but I only got to it now, to be
clear. But hopefully you got your money's worth there, sir, with getting to listen to Andre read those passages from the book. That was amazing. So.
And the Mad Leprechaun says for $5, Pinhead to James Bond. No tears, please, Mr. Bond. It's a waste of good suffering.
It's a waste of good suffering.
Yeah. And Rambam 3000 says for £5 I think the true horror of the Hellbound heart is just how fast Julia becomes a serial killer to resurrect Frank. Yes, indeed. That's she's a real villain of the piece.
Whoa. And I think that's
sorry, that was me.
No,
my
that's
phone
all right.
went off. Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of part of the what's the word I'm looking for? That's kind of part of the underlying story, underlying kind of theme in Hellraiser is like, what extent are you willing to go? Right? Like,
indeed.
Because first it's Frank. It's like, well, what extent is he willing to go beyond that, that ultimate thrill? And the same thing with her is like, what extent is she willing to go for Frank? Right. And then, same thing can be said about Kirsty and stuff like that a little bit later on in certain things. And, it's kind of this whole idea of, because you even have the husband, how far is he willing to go for certain things? And like, yeah, it's a very, I think that's something that Clive likes to play with, is definitely like that taboo of you set up somebody's boundaries and then you see if they'll go past those boundaries.
Yeah, indeed. And then we have my countryman Atle Mørk Oftedal, who says for 109 krona. Craig-era Bond, a complete failure. Cubby must be turning in his grave. Dune, so much sound and fury, signifying nothing. No building of tension or character, who cares? Dull, so dull. So Atle evidently wasn't a fan of the recent movies. So, yeah. And then we have someone else, not from Norway, but from the Nordic. Erik Runge Madsen, he comments on what I said before about like how Hollywood views whenever they have movies going to Norway or Sweden, they view us as like devil worshipping pagans. And then our good friend from Denmark, Erik Runge Madsen, weighs in for 50 Danish kroner, saying, Andre, as a Dane, I can only agree with the Hollywood director's take on Norway and Sweden. Devil worshippers, cultists, and Wendell's the lot of you. So yeah, there is that. There is that. Come to Norway and Sweden and get sacrificed.
You guys still have that problem? I mean...
Well, we have like people get killed and disappear every once in a while, and when people disappears, they tend not to be found. So yeah, you never know.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Primark Vulcan says for $4.99, James A. Corey just dropped the trailer for The Expanse Season 6. I was under the impression the series was taking a hiatus after Season 5 ended. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen the first 5 seasons.
Neither have I yet. I know it's on our docket.
It's on our list of things to do, but there's quite a lot of things on that list.
There it is.
I've seen up through Season 4, and it's a show you really have to sit there and watch carefully. It is very, very thick. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different subplots woven together. It's a very good show. I have not yet seen the 5th season. I thought the 5th season was supposed to be the end of it. If there's a 6th, then I'm surprised. So anyway.
Yeah. And then let's see here. I think we got everything, but MJ1 Media says he stepped out for a moment and wondered if he missed a super chat. And yes, you did. We did cover it.
Yeah,
but
we got it, Mega Jetty.
One more time, just for you. MJ1 Media said for $2, either 60s or retro 60s, like in Tomorrow Never Dies. And yeah, those would both be good ways of doing it. So we'll see what they do. We'll probably learn in the next few years here. And with that, then, we should be caught up unless something came up in the last 30 seconds.
Double check if I were you, because we got the Primarch Vulcan one. I think so. Yep.
Yeah, we got that the first time.
So,
I just did it again.
I would just double check. But if anybody feels like we missed their super chat,
if anyone feels
Naked Fame says we feel like he missed his, so double check on that.
Okay. Well, we shall check. I think I have gotten from Naked Fame, but I shall do a
check
double
on
check
your
here.
end, because I could have always missed on mine too. Because
but I am checking in my end.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just give me 1 second here.
Do you mean that James Bond will return Lashana Lynch catapults his rotting corpse into a minefield to set off the bombs in the next film for Queen and Country? I don't think we did get that one.
No, we did not get that one. So that would be the one.
Because there's another one here too. I don't think we got Purple Brains where it said 5 weeks difference. The EU response to recut Dune for
we
US.
did get that one.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but we did not get Naked Fame. So I'll say it one more time.
Yeah.
James Bond will return, was the end quote of the movie. Lashana catapults his rotting corpse into a minefield to set off the bombs in the next film for Queen and Country.
Sorry about
that. That would. The tragic thing is that, in principle, they could actually do a next movie about 007 Lashana Lynch with her going to the morgue and looking at the corpse of Daniel Craig. There he's still dead. Moving on. Then he has returned.
Oh, God. RJ, why did you even have to put this out in the ether? Hey, kids, I'm here to show you pain and pleasure at the same time. What do you think? That's what we'll get.
That's just no. I
did it to He-Man. You want me to do it to you, too? James Bond will return a weekend at
Oh, God. Wow. Oh God! Don't even say that.
That is too.
Don't give them ideas.
Well, Andrew McCarthy ain't done much lately, has he? Nor what's his face? I can't even remember the guy's name.
Yeah, I can't remember the other guy. I can see his face.
Something Silver. I can't.
Was it Jonathan Silver?
It's on Jonathan Silver. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two were like the '80s odd couple, weren't they? They were in like everything together. But anyway, no, please don't give them ideas. No, I'm not so sure. Let's just hope and pray that that all this shit comes to a head before they start working on the next Bond, because we know now is kind of their.
Now is when they
Jonathan
need
Silver,
to get a really freaking bad backlash.
And I think we're on the verge of it, right? We've got like a perfect storm happening here. We've had the Me Too and the BLM movement come under high scrutiny. We've had, people on that side of the aisle clap back at cancel culture. You've had Dave Chappelle do 2 very poignant specials. You've had other people speaking out, even people like Bill Maher, speaking on this for a while now. Even if you agree with him or not, he has had some poignant speeches lately about all this shit. And then he's starting to realize he's starting to get a bit of a right-wing following, which is kind of crazy for him. But it's like, well, if you start talking common sense, guess what happens?
Well, I will just say this before we label anyone this or that wing, that the scales have shifted so far that
they do, to be clear.
That you could be a complete and total centrist like 2 years ago, and your opinion haven't shifted anyway. And suddenly you are now described by others as a right-wing nutcase. Just because the scales have shifted that freaking badly.
I think everybody in Hollywood should just sit down and listen to Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell said, "Shut the fuck up. Nobody wants to hear what you think about politics."
Yeah, that's a very good advice. I mean, and also they should listen to what what's his face, the British comedian, like the one from The Office.
Oh, Ricky Gervais.
Thank you, Ricky Gervais. Like, listen to him when he said that you are, like, most of you don't have less school education than Greta Thunberg, so you are in no position to teach anyone anything.
Yeah, right.
So just accept your award, thank your God, and get the hell off the stage.
Be Joe Pesci. Yeah. Be Joe Pesci. Go up there and say, thanks, and walk off.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
The Geiger is right, though. I think you might be right on this. He might have a balanced audience by the end of the year. I used to watch his show, then I quit. And more of these clicks keep coming up, and I'm like, shit, I shouldn't have quit watching his show, because almost every other week now he's becoming part of the news. Yeah, exactly. That's how insane they are. You're right. Yeah, that's probably the same bit I was talking about, because I seen an article the other day where he was talking about he couldn't believe he's starting to get a lot of Republicans in his audience. That's a better way of putting it, right, Andre? There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's because he's been talking a lot about this stuff for a while. He doesn't agree with it. I mean, he's experienced cancel culture, right? A couple times. So, and I think that's where the Chappelle thing is really going to come up, next week when we talk about it, especially. And, it's coming up in the news more so with the whole trans thing and everything. And yeah, people need to start speaking out about this a little bit more. We had what's her face, all the backlash against that one chick 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but there's so much of it. You have to.
I know, but I'm trying to remember her name. They all got those weird, wacky names. I can't remember half of them. But yeah. Anyhow, I miss McDonald. Like RJ.
Anyhow, with that, we are actually fully caught up.
Yeah, and with that, I think we should probably call it a day.
Yeah. And so with that, we'd like to say thank you to Valiant Renegade for joining us. Now, when you're done watching us, head on over to Valiant's channel and check out his most recent video on the Venom box office.
Yeah, got that one out this morning, and should hopefully have a follow-up one come out Sunday sometime in the afternoon, once we have the complete weekend box office estimates, not only for Bond, but also for Venom. We'll see how well it hung on. But yeah, for those of you who haven't, check out the channel. Please subscribe if you like it. Check out the last couple of videos dealing with the box office, and share them out. Much appreciated.
Yes, indeed. And also thanks to Culture Casino for joining us earlier, although he had to leave. And of course, Kamran Pasha. Always a pleasure when he can join us and share his insights. And for more of those, check out his Patreon, linked in the description. Yeah. And with that, Tom, you know what it's time for?
No, I don't.
Well, why don't you think while you find it?
Yeah, I know.
Did it have water on them?
Koalas in the rain.
The fucks.
Yeah.
Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koalas in the rain.